Okay, looks like we are live. Fantastic.
One moment. I
Yeah.
will turn on the old
Oh,
money.
yeah. Ryan, could you make sure we're monetized and set the subscribers? Hopefully, he heard me somewhere in there. Okay.
What else did I have to say? Oh, I'm still on that bloody warning. I'm on that warning until about the 26th.
Oh, how
26th.
ridiculous.
Then
How
it's
ridiculous.
it's wild.
Oh,
The other lads had 20. What was it on the weekend? The other lads had 20 viewers, and I had one viewer, and I was like, well, we know what's going on here. Like, that makes no sense.
that doesn't make any sense, especially when it's exactly the same stream like that. But with between my travel channel, I did a dual stream when I was in Gyeongju on that beautiful bridge that everyone
Mm,
kept asking about. I did
yeah.
a dual stream to my travel channel, and my this channel, the Creative Contessa channel,
Mm,
got thousands of views. The
mm,
exact same stream on my travel channel got hundreds total,
yeah.
right? So that's it's clear that YouTube definitely decides to push certain things over other things, right?
Oh,
That's
100%. And
yeah.
I'm not sure if it's algorithm. Yeah, I was turned off. Give me a second to turn that on. I'm not sure if it's algorithm sorry, AI motivated, or if
Right.
there's an individual in the background, what's going on. I haven't kept up with all those. You know how they do all these kind of, what was it, video diary things every
Yeah.
month or so. I don't keep up
Right.
with that. So
No, I
I
don't either.
should. I should. I don't think nobody
No.
does, but I
I don't
should.
have
So I always,
time.
yeah,
I don't have
yeah.
time.
What's it called? I should, but no, I should keep up with those video diaries. I don't know anybody who keeps up with them. I was doing quite well playing with the algorithm when I was keeping up with those video diaries because I had a fair idea of what was going on and what stupid decisions they were making.
Right.
What was it called? But I have kept up for a while. I'll see what the crack is. I'll watch their silly little video diaries and I'll see what's going wrong. The problem is, I'll watch their video diaries and I'm like, it's people who don't know what they're doing making videos and then
Yeah.
deciding what's going on in YouTube. And I'm like, well, I can see what the problem is with YouTube. If you hired, it's insane. They need to hire people in the community, not people off in dilly dally land, because they're taking people straight from universities and chucking them into leading roles in YouTube. And I'm like, these are children telling
Yeah.
veterans what to do. It's like, oh, this is no wonder it's a car crash. And I'm always
Yeah.
clashing with them, always clashing with them. It's like, no wonder I have a warning. But they're so stupid. They are, oh my
Well,
God.
I mean, it's, I would be almost happy if we were dealing with actual humans, but I suspect it's some kind of software.
Uh,
Might not even be the algorithm. It might just
yeah.
be the software. Um, and because you and I have experimented, right? We've
Mm,
experimented with different screen layouts, and what we found out is that if we go split screen, then our views go way down. But if the
yeah.
screen is mostly on me, then our views go way up. If the screen's mostly on you, our views go way down again.
Mm.
And you're a very handsome man. It's not that. It's that I figured it out. For whatever reason, the quality of your video is not as high as the quality of mine. Like, I don't
Yeah.
know if you don't have this. I'm in Korea, so I've got crazy strong internet, right?
Yeah.
Um, and
The
and so
internet's good.
there's
It's just that technology goes to hell, especially when that boggy this heat right here is destroying. Like my quality this morning, you probably see my shirt this morning and yesterday. The quality is terrible, but I can't help it because by the
right,
time I start recording, everything is like that boggy heat here in Okinawa.
right.
Anybody else who's like in the chat who's been to Okinawa? Rachel, you've been to Okinawa a few
Oh
times, haven't
yeah,
you?
yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah,
you
yeah.
you know all about it.
Yep.
And anyone else in chat who's been over to Okinawa for business reasons will tell you straight up, oh, that bogginess is special. That boggy heat, like,
Yeah, and it's unfortunately so there's something that recognizes that your picture is not as clear as my picture is,
yeah,
or and so then it decides, well, this stream isn't going to be pushed.
mm,
That's what it comes down to. So
oh, it's got
there's
to be.
clearly something watching, whether it's a human. I doubt it's a human. Let's be frank. It's
This
probably some kind of software.
one,
Yeah.
But that's what's crazy is yesterday, Ukraine announced over the weekend they've replaced all of their Ukrainian regiments, battalions,
Ha.
with robots. and they had a giant push, a Terminator style push, because have you seen those robots yet, the AI robots?
No, I have not. This is news to me.
Yeah, so
I've been
they
living in medieval land.
so now they have, you need to check it out, the Chinese AI robots. Ukraine also has them, America has them, and they have AI tanks. Basically, everything you've seen in that film back in the 80s, that's all real now. They've replaced entire human battalions with robots. And they had a whole push this weekend, the first ever. It's a big commercial thing because instead of wasting the Ukraine, and it's, oh my God, what a weird world we're in. So basically, this push that happened over the weekend, that did not come out of the Ukrainian military budget. This came out of the budget of, military defense contractors, because they wanted to show off, hey, look, this is the future and stuff. And so they had a big marketing push over the weekend of this. All these AI robots pushing back human
Right.
Russians, right? So they were fighting human Russians. They were in the trenches, in the snow and the ice, and suddenly all the robots started to push forward. So imagine World War One trenches, Russian soldiers with their modern weapons, and suddenly all these futuristic robots pushing in. So that's the weird Terminator. And I said it to my mom. My mom was like, I didn't see this in any of the news. It's in CNN. CNN has it. It gives a description but doesn't show any videos or anything of what this push is like. Allegedly, all these images and videos exist, and they're under the copyright of the the U.S. defense contractors, and there's other contractors in there as well, because they want to use this as a big marketing push for the future of warfare. But I was watching this and I was like, wow, we really do live in a bizarre future. Like, you know,
Like, the future is dumb. I mean, it really is dumb. It's like, I can't read my book because the battery needs to be charged. It's like,
yeah.
what?
But they
Oh my
turned off.
God.
It was Amazon turned off they're still functioning, but they're disconnected from the Amazon shop for reasons people don't understand. Especially if, once again, if you're living out here in Okinawa, like my wife, because my wife prefers in fairness, she does have the 2020, was it 2026 or some new version of the Kindle anyway. She does have the new version of the Kindle, but she prefers, especially in this heat and stuff, the 2011 version of the Kindle. And they've turned off the 2011 version of the Kindle because it was allegedly, it was too good. And it wouldn't die. And like my wife loved the 2011 version of the Kindle because although it was very, very simple, and that's why people loved it so much, because of how simple it was. You could get that thing and smash it around the place. You could get it and whack it off the table or drop it all over the place. It was pretty much, it felt like a Cold War book more than anything else. And so because of that, allegedly, that's why Amazon disconnected it. I'm not sure, like, I can't remember what legitimate reason they gave to disconnecting the Amazon books from 2011
We're no
from the
right.
Amazon shop.
We're no longer supporting it. Right. That was
That's
probably,
what they
they probably
said.
said something
Yeah.
like that, which, okay, just stop supporting it, but that means no more software updates. It should still be able to function. But I mean, the reality is that these days, I mean, this is a big difference between the medieval world and the modern world, right? Products now are built to degrade, to decompose, to break down, to cease to function
Yes.
within a very short time, thereby forcing people, we we like to call them consumers. Let's be honest, forcing people to buy more, right?
Yeah.
So, and that is something that in the medieval world would have been no, not allowed. Just not allowed. No one would have bought something that was intentionally going to degrade within 2 years, that you had to buy a new thing. In fact, medieval objects were built so well and crafted so sturdily that, they can sit in the ground for 700 years and then we can find them, right? Like that's how well, and that's, I wish we would go back to that. I mean, hell, even in my grandmother's era, my grandmother had a Maytag washing machine and a Maytag dryer. And she bought those, I think, in the 60s.
Yeah.
And when she died, when I was 13 in 1993, both of them were still functioning.
Yeah.
Just fine.
Mm,
Just fine. Not a single issue. Never had to call a repairman. Never had to have anything fixed. They didn't eat socks.
mm.
Um, and now how long does a washing machine or a dryer last,
Yeah.
right? Before you have to go
Right.
and buy a new one. And
But
the cost of having them repaired is more than buying a new one.
mm. But somebody said that the other day. It was on YouTube. I was looking at a video, and somebody had a refrigerator from the 1960s, and the refrigerator from the 1960s actually has more stuff in it. In particular, even the freezing of ice in it. There's a special flip container that you pour water into it. You come back a few hours later, and all you need to
Right.
do is put whatever cup or whatever you have want to do, and you flip the ice, and the ice comes out perfectly. And the ice,
Yep.
it's way more superior than what we have now, where you have to take out this entire tray, and it gets dumped in there as well. Like there's nowhere
Yep.
specifically to put it; it just gets dumped in.
It
But
does.
there's so much, like when you look at the way it's organized, the refrigerator from the Cold War in the 1960s, and you look at the way my fridge is organized, it's smaller and everything's like all over the place. And I there's so much stuff, like when it comes down to where do I put my chicken, where do I put A, B, and C, there never seems to be the right kind of space. Like, but I was looking at the refrigerator from the 1960s, and by God, it looks bigger and it's way more organized. Like there's
Right.
a shelf for everything, and it's like
Yep.
you can tell it was put together. I don't know if it was a man or woman who actually put it together, but a housewife had an opinion in there because everywhere has a space, you know?
Yep.
It's definitely somebody who's insanely switched on, put it together. And you would assume, and this is the thing, is that everyone assumes we're evolving, we're getting better. And yet, why is there a loss in this technology? Like, and it's not even that far away, do you
Yeah.
know?
No, it's intentional. It's not. So at this point, it's not a question of, oh, we're declining because we're forgetting. No, no, no. This is all, it's greed. It's corporate greed. It's
Mm,
these manufacturers wanting to make more money by forcing people to
mm,
constantly buy more, right? Because well, this one isn't satisfying, so maybe the next one will be more satisfying in the case of the fridge, for instance.
mm,
So it's we live in the worst timeline.
oh,
We
for
we
sure.
really do. And speaking of timelines, as I'm getting dressed, my friend Kate actually sent me a video, a Crow's Eye production getting dressed video, a
Oh,
medieval getting dressed video. I don't know if you've seen any of Crow's Eye's productions
I don't
stuff.
think I have.
It's actually, they're very, I mean, they're clearly, it's a professional film producers, right? Like they have bucks, they have the skills to do like all the artistic editing and whatnot. This is not a small creator like me, right? They
Mm,
have a full production team. And normally I really, their videos are at least from a, you know, filmography standpoint are well put
mm.
together. Um, she actually was listening to it though, and she sent it to me and she said, there is so much wrong with this. And she was so right. So they actually said in this video, they said, well, women didn't wear underpants in the Middle Ages, so they could easily urinate publicly.
Oh my God.
I'm like,
Sorry. Yeah, sorry
what?
there. Thank
Yeah,
you
go on.
so much for the donations there. If you have any questions there, definitely ask us. And thanks again for the
Oh, I'm
donations.
sorry, I can't see the donations aren't showing up on my thing. So thank you for those who made donations. Who
Oh,
made
and the more
donations?
donations. Thank you so much as well, Kevin, for the donation.
Uh,
Means a ton to us that they're both
hmm?
over to your channel as well.
Oh, okay. Oh, thank you for the jewels. Yeah, much appreciated. Thank you for noticing, Philip. It either didn't show up or just I
Yeah,
didn't see it.
it's not showing up. Those jewels and stuff are not showing up on our channel. But make sure as well, if you have any questions, me and Rachel are somewhat rambling on. We're slowly getting onto the topic at hand.
Yeah,
We're kind of having
yeah.
a
So
slow introduction in. But
yeah, so the
if you
top
haven't,
the one of the topics I definitely want to talk about was this medieval underwear thing and women,
mm,
and
oh, yeah,
especially this weird idea that women would just publicly urinate. And the worst part about it, it implied that they just peed themselves. Like, it's not that the woman like copped a squat over a chamber pot in public. No, no, that she would just stand there, urinate, let her smock absorb the urine, and
yeah.
then go on about her day.
Yeah.
WTF?
Yeah.
WTF? I
Mm.
like. I mean, Philip, can you imagine how disgusting that would be to just
But
let the
you
urine
are.
run down the insides of your legs and soak through your clothing?
Well,
I,
first off, I like within the community itself, you're definitely going to get
hmm?
yourself bullied really, really fast. Like I could imagine, like even these days, living in a somewhat disconnected society where we don't really pay attention to our neighbor the way we used to, you would still get somewhat bullied. But back then, I reckon you would definitely solidly get bullied back in line if you were to do something so strange,
Well, and
as in just urinating yourself.
right, and so then of course the argument this brings us to one of the usual myths we hear people utter about the Middle Ages. Well, everyone smelled so bad anyway, no one would notice.
No.
No,
Don't get me
just
wrong.
just
The,
no.
don't get me wrong. There is literature from the 10th century from Northumberland, which is bitching from the Anglo Danes and from the Gaul Gael, the Irish Vikings, bitching about the southern Anglo Saxons being more smelly. Okay. There is literature like that, but everybody does clean. But even on top of that, the fact that the Anglo Danes, the people from Northumberland, are bitching about the Southerners being smelly gives an idea that there is a scale to this, that
Right,
people are cleaning themselves and they're taking a level of pride. Because in it, it talks about, what was it called? It's written in the 10th century, it's written by a bishop. I can't remember exactly who it is. But he's writing at the fact that the Anglo Danes are taking all of the Anglo Saxon women, and the
right,
reason why they're taking all the women is because they smell way better than their southern counterparts,
right.
which gives you a really good idea of the cleanliness of the period, and
Well,
even the
well,
fact that southern women would prefer to go off with Anglo Danes than southern men.
right. And but I mean, but also we have to take it. What is smelly, right? Like, so
Yeah.
it could be that the Anglo Danes are using some kinds of like nice, sweet smelling oils that make them not smell
Yes.
just like normal people, but make them smell like really nice, right?
Yeah.
And so we have to take accounts like that into consideration. Like the Arabs in the
Mm,
Crusades talk about how malodorous the Crusaders were,
mm,
and that was even with them going to the bathhouse. But the Arab chronicles of the Crusades are not an unbiased source, right?
mm,
They view the Franks as their enemies, and so of course they're going to write about them being barbarians and uncivilized and filthy and stinky, and also of course they're Christians. So you can't just look at these chronicles and say, oh, this is an objective account. As what have I said? What have I been saying consistently over the last several months? If it bleeds, it leads. That so the corollary to that is if it stinks, people will read it also. So no one wants to read about, oh, everyone is happy, everyone was clean, everyone was perfect, we lived in harmony. The end. That's
mm.
boring. No one wants to read that. Everyone wants to
Yeah.
read about, oh my God, those Anglo Saxons, man, they smelled so bad. So that's those you can't just look at chronicles and say, well, this tells us the objective truth.
Mm,
But also what smells bad and what is malodorous to one group of people may be different than to another group of people based on their culture, right? I mean,
mm,
some people now don't like the smell of frankincense and myrrh, for
mm.
instance. But in the Middle Ages, frankincense and myrrh were heavily utilized in oils to make the body smell nice.
Yeah.
But now some people smell that and they go, oh, I don't like that smell.
Mm,
So, some people might say, oh, that's smelly. I don't like that.
yeah.
So we can't go, but we can go on is, when you have laws that regulate things like bathhouses, when you have health manuals that talk about the importance of needing to clean, when you have doctors who are saying, if you smell bad, you're going to die because you will catch a contagion, because that's
Mm,
how you catch contagion, right? We have
yeah.
to look at the whole picture.
Mm.
And also the 10th century is kind of still a little early on.
The
This,
10th century, but there
yeah,
is, because you see, I'm still looking at it from a very Irish perspective when we're bringing in an economic golden age, and we do have the Vikings who are notoriously famous for bringing, as you said there, the shampoos and the various what was it called, spices and
Toiletries,
stuff,
the
toiletries,
toiletries.
yes, that
Yeah.
they're bringing in with the Viking Golden Age and stuff. We're not quite 100% sure. We do get a very, very good idea that the clergy in Ireland before that are also very, very clean, especially when they have connections with the Byzantine and with Ethiopia. So it gives us a good idea that they perhaps were very clean, especially when it continuously talks about saunas, that we
Yeah.
have members of the clergy going to a sauna before going to church, which gives us
Yeah.
a really good idea, especially when they're highlighting the idea of to be what was it, cleanliness to godliness? I'm sure
Yeah.
that's the quote
Yeah.
from the Bible.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Got, cleanliness is godliness, right?
yes, that's the
I
one.
mean, that's the thing. This another good source on people's daily habits, at least on the monastic side, right?
Mm,
We have lots of regulations from these monastic communities, and they
mm,
detail aspects of daily life, such as the clothing they're supposed to wear, what they're allowed to wear, the layers of clothing, which is how we have evidence from the 12th century, for instance, of nuns having been regulated to wear underpants because they're in the
ah,
regulations. They are
yes.
included in the regulations of the garments a nun should wear
Mm,
and should own. And there's this poem from the 12th century called The Nun's Lament, and she complains about because something has happened to her situation. I haven't gotten to read the whole poem yet.
mm,
She complains that she's wearing underpants that are not clean,
yeah.
which tells us two things.
Mm,
One, she was wearing underpants. Two, they weren't clean and she didn't like it. She
mm,
she's complaining about her clothes being dirty, which also tells us that if she's complaining about it, that means that's not the usual, right? So
yeah.
we have lots of different sources for things like that in the monastic and a lot of I haven't read all of them, but the couple of sets of monastic regulations I have read all talk about cleaning before going to mass, being clean, not showing up to mass dirty.
Yeah.
So, there's all these different sources that we can take as a composite to get an idea that, contrary to what the Victorians wanted the poor people in their society to believe, the Middle Ages was actually not a filthy, dirty era of endless squalor and poverty.
Yeah.
So,
100%. Just a question now. I do apologize because God, not only do we have donations not getting through, but also questions are not getting
oh,
through as
for
well. So
bloody hell.
I do massively apologize for that. One particular question I do actually like is, did sailors at the time, and I'll answer this one, and then I'll let Rachel
Yeah,
expand
go
into
for
the
it.
15th century. Did sailors at the time have some type of hygiene um, hygiene standard. And for that one, I would say in Ireland in the 10th century, even before that, yeah, big time, at least once a week. It's mostly looking at the Irish Vikings. When I say Irish Vikings, I mean the people that live in Dublin, Waterford, Cork, Limerick, the people who are sailing around the place. And at least once a week, they have to completely wash themselves and bathe, okay? Most likely, as we were just discussing there, before they go to church. So they had to be completely cleaned and cleansed before they went into church for the
Mm,
old clan assemblies and all that kind of stuff. So at least once a week, they did scrub themselves clean. For
right.
that, and that came in. That also comes in with the Scandinavians. When the Scandinavians come in as well, they clean themselves at least once a week as well. Now it could be debated. Mostly, I would assume they would clean themselves either Saturday or Sunday for church, depending on which day they had church, because there's always a huge argument on which day people had church. Was it a Saturday or Sunday? Today we have it on a Sunday, but still, even theologians still today argue, should it be the Saturday or the Sunday? Anyway, regardless, the Vikings as well, from my understanding, I'll have to check up on that as well, originally would have washed and bathed themselves. The Scandinavians ones that is would have came in on a Wednesday, so they would have washed themselves on a Wednesday originally, but I assume that they would have moved it to the Saturday or Sunday, because many of them actually, the Irish Vikings, people who lived in Ireland, actually believed in Jesus. Okay, so they not only believed, most likely because we can see by looking at their effigies, believed
Mm,
in Odin in and low key, but they also constructed crosses as well with Jesus Christ on it. And also on top of that, Dublin, Waterford, Cork, they all have churches. So most likely, not only did they believe in their various local gods and goddesses, but it would have also gone into the monastic settlement to pray to Jesus as well, most likely.
Right.
So they probably moved the day they clean. They either clean themselves twice a week on a Wednesday or Saturday or Sunday, or they probably just waited until the weekend to clean themselves to go into church. Rachel
Yeah.
could easily debate with that one as well.
Well, I mean, Mass, here's the thing. Now, I'm not as familiar with practices in the first millennium, but by the later Middle Ages, Mass is a daily thing, right?
Okay.
You don't do anything before you hear Mass. But
Yeah.
it's not like people these days, especially, God knows, since the Reformation, and especially on the Protestant side, where you have like all day church services where you just sit there for hours and hours and the preacher preaches at you. That's not a medieval mass. A medieval mass was something that lasted like 15, 20 minutes tops. And there were high masses, but I'm talking about the daily mass, not the high mass. High mass is a whole different thing, on holy high days and on, feast days and all the different special days. That's a different conversation. But, for the most part, you weren't supposed to do most things until you heard Mass.
Okay.
So I'm not certain, I'm not certain what the source is for them only going to Mass one day a week, but that's the first millennium, and it's a different time. The church is still very much in development and in transition in the first millennium, especially as people are slowly converting from non-Christian. And I hate to use the word pagan. Like I've tried to stop using that because it presents one set of non-Christian beliefs in one light, whereas we don't refer to Buddhism and Hinduism as pagan, So I've just started calling them non-Christian or non-Abrahamic, depending on the context, right? Because, the Abrahamic faiths are Islam, Judaism, and Christianity. So, I've tried to move away from the term pagan, and it's because it was meant to be insulting. Right? It was meant to be insulting originally.
Yeah. It's so funny because it kind of blurs in, because it was, as we were saying there, you're also dealing with people in Ireland who still kind of believe in their local kind of gods, who are blurring between saints and gods. And it's the same thing with the Norwegians when they come in and settle in the city areas of Ireland, such as Cork, Waterford, Limerick, etc. There are also, in Waterford, you have St. Olaf's Church, which means, and like we know that saying somebody has a good argument out there. I can't remember who has a good argument that Saint Olaf is the replacement for Odin. So that means that instead of going to worship Odin, somebody's going off to Olaf. So does this guy, like these people who are, and this is in the 10th century, Saint Olaf's Church is still in Waterford today. Like how does that function and work? Like, so are they going in, like, are they clicking to this? Did they know that this is a kind of hidden kind of Odin cult or something? Like, how does that function, especially when that blur is on? And obviously this is not documented because, if they are secretly worshipping Odin, they don't want us Roman Christians to know about this.
Right. At best, if you could, possibly, I'm not saying this has happened, but a source that might document that might be some monk actually writing about how, because just because they're doing it in secret doesn't mean people don't know. So some monk could say, well, the rumors are that these people are actually still continuing in their old beliefs. Like maybe there's a chronicle like that somewhere, but it hasn't been discovered. That's how you possibly could know. But as you say, I don't think that evidence has yet been uncovered, really,
Yeah. Just popping over to the 15th century. Did sailors in the 15th century clean themselves,
so I think part of the problem might be that. So first off, I'm going to talk pre-Age of Exploration. So before the Portuguese start going on their crazy long trips, right? Yeah. Because that changes the nature of sailing. And so most people think of sailing and being a sailor in terms of 17th, 18th, and 19th century sailor's life, where they spend weeks at sea or months at sea actually, and that's not the medieval way of sailing. That didn't happen. For the most part, sailing people stuck, the ships stuck relatively close to the coast, and they would put into harbor relatively regularly to resupply and or to deliver goods, because the people who were sailing in this era were mostly merchant fleets, right? It wasn't navies going out and waging war for the most part. In this era, it's merchant fleets. And, you could even, with a certain, I don't know, jaded view the Norse excursions as a form of violent merchant fleet, I guess. But they're not out for weeks or months at a time. So it's not like they're living on these ships the way people were in the 17th, 18th, and 19th century. So we have to reframe our idea of sailor from that perspective. Most sailors were, as such, not just sailors. That wasn't necessarily their full sole profession. So cleanliness, I haven't read any regulations, but I'm going to assume that every time they put into port, they would go to a bathhouse, because in medieval Europe, there were bathhouses everywhere and people used them all the time. You didn't have to have a big wooden tub in your private home and go to the labor and expense of heating mass amounts of water. You could just go to the public bathhouse, which had hot water. So I'm going to assume that, sailors are people too, and they probably didn't like smelling bad either. And so every time they put into port, probably one of the things they did was go and go to the bathhouse and really get a good cleanse on. But even in between bathhouse visits, there is absolutely an easy way for people to keep themselves clean, and that's a bowl of water, a basin of water, and a rag. You don't even need soap. You really don't. Basin of water and a rag will get the job done for in between those, what I would call deep cleanings. One of my followers actually put a good turn of phrase in my head I'd never heard of before: the everything shower. So the everything shower is the shower where you shave everything, where you do all the exfoliation, where you do the salt scrub, where you do the hair wash and the conditioning, and then you do the deep conditioning, right? The everything shower. Going to a medieval bathhouse was the equivalent of the everything shower, where you did everything, where there were shaving services available there, in fact. Yeah. So it was like it was like a spa day, right? And you could soak in a deep tub of hot water, or you could go sit in the warm room, right? There were cool pools. There were sometimes cool tubs as well, dependent on the bathhouse, right? And you would actually sometimes it was really like a spa day. Now, maybe not with, esoteric music tinkling in the background, but some of the nice bathhouses apparently did sometimes actually have musicians playing. If they had customers of a more means provided sort, shall we say, a richer sort.
Yeah, it is interesting, all right, and I thank God that there's a level of it's the image of the bathhouse is starting to get popular, because weirdly enough, because of video games, funny enough, because of the likes of Kingdom Come Deliverance and stuff, allowing us to be able to have much more of an educated idea. But it's still so strange how people still have a very kind of dark age interpretation, especially of the 15th century, where people aren't batting and they're just, relieving themselves in public like that. It's so, like, I can't even imagine it.
Just urinating right into their smocks. I mean, God.
Especially when there's designated areas to use the toilet. But, like, even common sense-wise, it's like, if you're in a community and you're there, you're doing your bits and bobs around the community, and somebody just randomly just relieves themselves in front of you, like, don't you feel that there's a level of savagery to that? Like it's so bizarre. Go on.
Yeah, even and we know that kind of behavior was not acceptable, because if you start reading the statutes of various medieval European cities, and again, I'm going to exclude Spain from anything I'm about to say, because Spain is the exception to almost everything about the medieval world. Spain does not go through a dark age. In fact, you might say that the beginning of Spain's dark age is when Isabella la Católica and Fernando take over and kick out all of the Jews and the Muslims, right? That might actually, I could make a good argument for that as the start of Spain's Dark Age. Um,
I
with,
don't agree with the expelling of the Jewish communities,
oh,
but yeah, I think that was about by far one of the stupidest things you could do, especially as you're pointing out there financially, because there's a massive slap to the stock market when the silver comes in. Once the silver comes in,
yeah,
they do not have
yeah,
the Jewish community to be able to digest that into the Mediterranean world.
yep.
That was very, very stupid,
Crashed
especially
their economy.
yeah,
Crashed their economy.
especially when you have oh my god, I keep mixing up them. Oh, you're gonna correct me on this pronunciation. The Sephardic. Oh my god, I'm doing it wrong. I'm doing it wrong. Sephardic Jewish community.
Sephardic.
I apologize for
They're
this.
not.
Right,
They're not. They're
Sephardic.
not a modern beauty line. Not
Yeah.
Sephora. Sephardic.
Sephardic Jewish community, which has amazing connections with the Egyptian and Palestinian world at the time, and they could have easily digest that into the what was it, the Mamluks and the Ottoman Empire, because
Yeah.
they had the connections there to do it, and instead they just it's debatable because originally it is debated that they didn't want to do that. It was the papacy allegedly pressured them, and you see the papacy is connected to a different Jewish community, so they do reckon that there was a bit of backstage propaganda.
Politics. Yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, so, even the Inquisition is tied to economic politics. So one of the justifications for the founding of the first Spanish Inquisition, which only happens in 1478, by the way, everyone, it's not a defining feature of medieval Spain at all. In fact, Spain is defined by its total lack of inquisitions until 1478. But one of the identifying reasons, written by I forget which archbishop it was at the time, but one of the reason he says, it might have even been Torquemada, who was not an archbishop, but anyway, it might have even been Torquemada, who writes that the reason that they have to be worried about the Jews in their community is because of their economic ties to other polities.
Yeah.
And so they were actually worried about the loyalty of the Jewish members of their community. And they were also worried. They said, we're worried about the Jewish members of our community controlling such large amounts of wealth. Says it in plain writing, right? Says it, we're not really, you can tell by reading, it's like, yeah, you're not really so concerned about their faith. You're really concerned about the money. Who controls the money and to whom do they own their loyalty? Right. So that you start digging, almost always, Philip, you start scratching at the surface of these wars of religion, you almost always get really quickly down to an economic anxiety.
Oh yeah, 100%. You can see it today. I won't go too much into that one because we're starting to touch into the taboo level. But 100%. Because this is another thing as well, is that people assume, and this is the thing, this is where it goes into the conspiracy level. We can talk about the conspiracy level because it's so stupid. Is that the Jews control the world? They don't, because they all disagree with each other. There's actually, this is the reason why I was trying to identify which group it was, is because that group is different to the group that was connected to the papacy. They're two different factions. They're, in fact, two different branches altogether. And that's really important to identify when having this discussion, because you can't turn around and say, because when you say the Jews control the world, you're assuming that it's just one faction. And yet this is why when you turn around to a Jewish person, like one of my Jewish friends and stuff, and you say the Jews control the world, if you were to go up to a Jew in Manhattan and say, the Jews control the world, they would laugh at you, because even the Jews of Manhattan disagree with each other. In fact, if you go down the street of Diamonds, which has a good few Indian and Jewish families in there, they outright argue and fight amongst each other. Sometimes, I hate saying this one, physically as well. There's famous clips of them online physically fighting over money. They're not the biggest fans of themselves, even in Manhattan, never mind in the wider world. So to turn around and say the Jews as a singular control the world, it's a bit like...
Well, I mean, that's like saying Christians control the world. How many denominations of us are there? How violently do some of them as you say, physically fight with each other.
Yeah.
It's not. I mean, Islam is the same way. Islam has many denominations,
Mm,
and they have the wars. A lot of the wars in the Middle East are between, Shia and Sunni, right?
mm,
They are not. It is not a monolith. It is not a monolith of faith. None of these. And Buddhism is the same way, although less violent in the disagreements about
mm,
the different ways of worshiping, of practicing Buddhism. But yeah, in short, back to the topic of bathing, which has got us this topic via Spain. What I'm
mm.
about to say about bathing doesn't have anything to do with, because Spain just kept going, right? In fact, Spain doesn't lose floor heating technology at
Mm,
all. Spain just continues on with the ancient Roman style of hypocaust, courtesy in part, the Visigoths took it over, and then when the Arabs invade,
mm,
they just they also had inherited the ancient Roman infrastructure and technology and the engineering savvy to keep it going. So they just kept it going. So their bathhouses were super swanky with floor heating and super sophisticated plumbing and everything. So Spain is particularly nice smelling, shall we
mm,
say,
mm,
in the Middle Ages. But even the rest of Europe, the bathhouses are documented in the archaeology, they're documented in the regulations, they're mentioned casually in a variety of not just chronicles, but sometimes folk stories. So, we know that people bathed. And I wanted that brought me that someone might comment when we were talking about sailors bathing that, you know, water on a ship is a precious commodity, so you're not going to waste it for bathing. Absolutely, I would agree with that. Freshwater is anyway, but in a pinch, you can use a dry cloth, as we've talked about, to just scrub your body down, right?
mm.
You don't necessarily have to have water if it's one of those in between actual bathhouse excursions, but
Yeah.
ships also just weren't out to sea for weeks and months at a time. That's not
Mm.
how sailing worked in this era.
Yeah, that's also true as well because you can see going between Ireland to Spain, they actually have to stop off a few times in what was it, Brittany, and also over to oh my god, Aquitaine, and then eventually over to the Iberian Peninsula. They don't stay; they can't go straight from Cork, where I'm from, straight down to the Iberian Peninsula. They actually have to stop off in Brittany and over to Aquitaine. And that's why they build up a good relationship with the people in those areas, is because they stop off a night in there to, do whatever business they need to do before going off over to the areas. Was it Galicia, isn't it, in northern Spain? Oh, sound is a wee bit gone.
Microphone is, I don't know why my mic decided to mute itself. Literally, I look at the screen and there's a message that says, I haven't touched it, by the way. There's a message that says, your mic is muted. I've
Mm,
got everyone, if you don't know, I have gremlins um, who
guys.
random wreak havoc. Anyway, yes, Galicia is in northwestern Spain.
Mm. That's actually somebody in the comments section said the French didn't like the bat. That's actually in the 18th century. Rachel can easily expand on that
Yeah,
way more. But actually, in the 15th century, the French did actually bat. It's not until we get into the 16th century and there's a huge STI outbreak, especially up around Rome and stuff. Rachel can easily correct me on all this. Is the fact that it's not until we get up to the 16th century and we have a massive STI outbreak that kicks off from Europe all the way over to Japan. So even in
yeah,
Japan, they were having huge outbreaks of STIs kicking off left, right, and center in the major settlements. The people are suddenly turning around and saying, "Oh, maybe it's the
yeah,
bats. Maybe it's just batting is the problem." They don't stop batting in Japan. The STIs kind of come in, wreck up the place, and then go away again. They don't turn around. They kind of just blame the Chinese like they usually do. They don't stop bashing. In Europe, on the
and
other
the
hand, they
foreigners.
do blame each other, but they don't turn around and say, in Europe, they do turn around and say, it's the bats. The bats are the
Yeah,
problem. They just don't do it in Japan for some reason.
yeah, yeah. There's actually, yeah. So the French absolutely bathed in the Middle Ages.
Yeah.
If anyone has, or not just bathed, but washed themselves,
Yeah.
Again, you don't have to submerge your body in water to clean it. Believe it
Mm,
or not, you don't. You can keep yourself very, very clean with a basin of water and a washcloth. I have done this for 2 weeks at a time in a 15th century living history setting. It
mm,
was no problem. I smelled perfectly fine. Everything was clean. I even washed my hair that way with a basin. And I demonstrate this on my YouTube channel. There's a video where I demonstrate, it was a live stream, it's now a recording, where I demonstrate washing your hair using a basin of water or an ewer of water and a basin, and
mm.
how you do it without taking your clothes off, in fact. So, we know that in Paris, we have records. Again, we have town records talking about the numbers of bathhouses that are in the city, because very frequently bathhouses had to be licensed, they
Mm,
were regulated, they were inspected. They weren't just allowed to kind of operate on their own. The medieval world was actually much more regulated than people realize. People think that city regulations or regulations of full stop or a new concept. They are not.
mm.
And the thing you're talking about, so a lot of bathhouses, not all of them, but a lot of bathhouses do shut down in the 16th century.
Yeah.
And Eras, not Erasmus. No, it is Erasmus. Erasmus, writing in this famous early 16th century scholar. He writes in the early 1520s. I think it might have been in 1522. He
Mm,
writes that 20 years ago there
yeah.
used to be bathhouses everywhere, and he's talking about the Low Countries.
Yeah.
So he said 20 years ago there used to be bathhouses everywhere. But
Mm,
since then, most of them have closed down for fear of catching a disease,
yeah.
right? And he says he talks about why they have become unpopular. So that actually predates the Reformation, in fact, because that's we're talking from 1500 to 1520-ish. So that is not yet a consequence of, the repressive nature of a lot of the Protestant sects that arise in the 16th century. You were right. According to him, it was a concern about the bathhouses spreading contagion.
Mm.
And it's not just the ones that are not just the diseases of Venus, shall we say, um, but also they're worried about plague.
Yeah.
They've noticed that when you're close to each other, then plague spreads, and the plague is endemic at this
Uh,
point. The
yeah.
plague in the 16th century is still coming around every 10 to 20 years and killing a lot of people and then moving on.
Mm.
So they're worried about the bathhouses being a way that plague is transmitted. And in
Ah.
fairness, it possibly is, because if it's person to person transmission,
Mm.
then, depending on the form of bubonic plague, right? There's different
Yeah.
forms. Or, it could have just been a coincidence, right? Because it's fleas on rats are definitely one of the forms of transmission.
Mm.
So, but also there is some talk about syphilis, for instance,
Mm.
specifically having been spread by the bathhouses. Again, it's not the bathhouses themselves. The problem is that a lot of bathhouses, not all of them, mind you, but a lot of them doubled as houses of ill repute, or at least a place where you could find a lady of the night to provide you with companionship,
Mm.
right? So it wasn't actually the bathing itself that was the problem, right? It was the activities that some bathhouses hosted.
Mm.
Unfortunately, like typical group punishment, well, it might only be this bathhouse in the town that is causing the spread of disease, but all of them get shut down.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Makes perfect sense. And I want to pop back over to, you see, this is the thing, right? Just going back over to the comment section again, is the fact that like most of the sources that people bring up about plagues and stuff kicking off during the medieval period, when you actually look at the source itself, not plagues and stuff, I mean, people not washing in the medieval
Mm-hmm,
period,
mm-hmm.
when you actually look at the source itself, it's not actually from the medieval period. What the
Yeah,
key lines they're looking at is they're assuming, because they see lines like king or court and stuff, they
right.
assume this is medieval literature they're looking at. No, it's not. Majority of this
No.
literature is actually coming from the Sun King from
Yep.
the, what was it, the 18th century. So you do have
Yep.
King Louis from the 18th century, who has a court in, oh my God, his entire
Versailles.
name, Versailles, that's the
Versailles.
one. And yeah, 100%. So when people turn around and say, oh, medieval people, they didn't bathe themselves. Instead, they put like perfumes and all that stuff on top of them. That's Versailles. That's the
That's
quotes from
Versailles.
Versailles. Yeah.
Yep. Yep.
So
It's really, there's some people who also think that the 18th century is medieval. It's literally
yes,
not. It's the modern era, guys.
yeah.
I hate to tell you this. It's
Mm,
it's the modern era. Most of the most of the misconceptions involving grotesque lifestyles
mm,
that people have about the Middle Ages are in fact about the 17th, 18th, and 19th centuries,
mm,
especially the 19th century.
yeah.
The the extreme poverty that people attribute to the medieval period is not medieval. That's a
Yeah.
product of the Industrial Revolution. It's a
Mm,
product of the modern era. Um,
mm,
the pollution in the cities, the foul rivers, that's a product of the modern era.
yeah.
Cholera is not a medieval problem. That's a
Mm,
modern era problem. So, and yet everyone assumes it's medieval, because this brings us back to the topic of linear trajectory of human progress. Human progress is not a straight line up. We have not been just constantly improving since, the ancient civilizations that we're now starting to excavate that date to 8,000 years ago, right?
mm,
We've not just been improving. We've had some downturns.
mm. Rachel, you're not role playing, are you? You're just doing living. What was it? Academic. Oh my
Yeah,
God, I'm tripping over
living
myself.
history.
Living
Living
history,
history.
which
Yeah.
is experimental archaeology.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
cosplaying is a funny one, all right. Because of the fact when you're cosplaying, you're kind of role playing as a character. When you're doing living history, is when you're doing experimental archaeology. So you're just wearing the clothing because you want to experiment on how the clothing feels, how it is on your body, and also then to do various tasks when you have the clothing on. So anybody can, like, and this is the thing of when people trip over themselves, is like what was it called? Somebody was saying like, oh, Rachel there, she's you get this with not wearing the correct Korean clothing or something, and it's like, well, that's
right.
she's you're not cosplaying, you're doing experimental archaeology because you want to put yourself in the shoes of either a Korean or an
Yep.
English woman. Rachel isn't pretending to be Korean, or she's not pretending to be an English or French woman. She's literally just putting on that clothing to do experimental archaeology, just to experiment on it, because there's no point you going off and writing endless amount of paperwork on or academic high standard work, and then suddenly somebody turn around and saying, actually, I've worn that clothing. That's not how you would get those results
Yep.
if you had actually worn the clothing. So instead of Rachel making a fool of herself, she's doing various experimental archaeology in the clothing just to prove that it can be done. So when people turn around and say you're a medieval cosplayer, no, 100% disagree that
Yeah, I mean,
Rachel's the medieval
I think the
cosplayer.
word cosplay has also gotten very diluted,
Oh, okay.
right? So
Mm,
it's like it's wandered away from its original intent, which was that you were supposed to be like representing a character from
yeah.
comic books or fiction or anime, right?
Mm,
And so now there does seem to be a historical cosplay world,
yeah.
which the line between where is the line? Excuse me. Where is the line between
Mm.
role playing, reenactment, and living history? Like at reenactments, there are people who depict actual historical personages, right?
Mm,
In at Civil War reenactment, there is someone. If you're at the Battle of Gettysburg, there is someone who's representing General Lee, right? There is someone who's depicting General Lee. Well, is that
mm,
role playing? He is pretending to be General Lee. Oh no, that's reenactment,
mm,
right? That has status, that
yeah.
has prestige,
Mm,
that's a well-respected historical character. So that is not cosplaying, that is not role
yeah.
playing, right?
Yeah.
But okay, so what is the actual distinction between those three? So there is a form of living history that does involve role playing, but not in the sense of like a game, where
Mm,
there's points and that sort of thing. And I do historical, I guess you could call it role playing as well. But for me, part of living history is also trying to understand the social interactions.
yeah.
And for that, that does take on a level of role playing. To try to
Mm,
get into their minds, you have to try to, like imitate how they would have interacted socially, how they would
yeah.
have addressed each other.
Mm,
Um, to a certain degree, depending on your linguistic skills, maybe how they would have spoken to each other, right?
yeah.
That's I don't necessarily count that as being different from living history. It's just you're reliving, you're doing an experimental archaeology with the social interactions,
Mm,
right? Which to do that properly, you need the proper kit. Like
yeah.
you can't understand what it was like to be, if you're just dressed like 15th century potter, let's
Yeah.
say, and you're making your pottery, but you're sitting there chit chatting about, having played this great, having spent 10 hours on campaign on World of Warcraft last night. That's
Mm,
not, you can't possibly understand actually the potter. You should try to talk about things that a 15th century potter would have talked about, right?
mm.
And maybe in the manner in which they would have phrased things, right? I don't necessarily count that as role playing in that frivolous description of role playing, right?
Yeah, and just to be clear, just before I continue this conversation on, just because this might bite me, it bite me in the ass when I continue on because it has actually in the past. By the way, I personally am not bad mouthing anybody who does cosplay or LARPing. I've got
Oh
lots of
no,
friends
no,
who
no,
do
no.
cosplay and LARPing. It's just last time I had this conversation, people felt like I was putting up a stiff upper lip, like, oh, those cosplayers over there,
Oh
because of
no.
the fact that I just don't, as of right now, I'm kind of not putting my time and effort into LARPing or cosplaying. My main focus has always been around was it experimental archaeology so far. However, I do have an interest in it. One person who does push the boundaries when it comes down to cosplaying and LARPing of the 13th century in the era of the First Barons War is the history of everything on YouTube. Recently, he's moved over to Spotify as well, and he is huge in the 13th century scene over in the United States when it comes down to the First Barons War. So if you're interested in that, definitely head on over to the history of everything. He pretty much kind of every day gives his own opinion both on modern politics and on what was it, the latest stuff that's happening on the history over in TikTok. He's actually quite good. Sometimes I disagree with his work. Sometimes I think his work is absolutely phenomenal. It's very, very good. He works the page as well with his partner, who's, I think she's from India, very well educated scientist. I can't remember what her field of expertise is, but she's very, very switched on. So him and his partner run that channel, The History of Everything, and there he puts a lot of time and effort into putting together his own events in cosplay and LARPing to do with the 13th
Yeah,
century,
I have some
especially.
friends who are attending who want to attend his
Mm,
next Barons War. They call it a Barons War LARP, and I'm like, I don't how that's the problem. The word LARP sometimes I feel like it trivial. Like people use the word LARP for
mm,
better or for worse to trivialize an
yeah,
activity, right? It's a game. It's just a game. But we're
yeah,
reenactors. We are recreating. We are reliving and reenacting the Battle of Towton. So we are
mm,
better than those LARPers. And
yeah,
I don't like that. I don't like that. I don't like. First off, I don't. Again, I don't think I think the dividing line between, you know, this this Barons War LARP,
mm,
how is that different from a reenactment of the Battle of Towton? And
yeah.
can you really call it a reenactment if you're sitting around camp bullshitting about whatever
Yes.
modern garbage is happening,
Yeah,
right?
that's it. Because like the justification is for the living history side of things is that you're doing experimental archaeology, trying to make it as real as possible, try to get as close as possible to the battle. But there's all because of health. The first major trip over is health and safety. At least
Right.
when the history of everything he organizes his event, it's LARPing swords. You're role playing as a character. They're fully immersed into the LARPing. But I think, and don't get me wrong, Rachel, I've come across the exact same thing as well, where people put up a stiff upper lip and are like, oh, I'm so cool because I'm using a real weapon. And it's like, but you're not taking the experimental archaeology side of things as serious as
Right.
you should do. If you like, You can't put the big stiff upper lip up if you're not taking the experimental side seriously. Like there's some guys in there dressing all in black, and it's like, okay, so you're putting your stiff upper lip against them. And this is I've seen this at 10th century events where you go down to the reenactment of the Battle of Clontarf, and they've
Right.
agreed to make this as close as possible. And the first major chip up is health and safety, where they can either go fully all in full play. What was it? Riveted mail, full
Hmm.
armor on, but that's also
Right.
not entirely realistic as well because you wouldn't have that many nobles on a battlefield. Plus, on
Right.
top of that, these guys they always dress in what they consider cool clothing, which could be all in black. And I'm like, but that's the clothing of a slave. And they're like, oh, oh, oh. And I'm like, you're dressed as a slave, sir. I thought you wanted to take this experimental archaeology seriously. Like,
Trust
this is
the
the
slave.
thing. If you were to do that at a LARP event where you're supposed to be fully role playing and immersed, you'd get into trouble. So why is it now acceptable where you're putting your stiff upper lip up and saying, "Oh, we're better than LARPers," but I can't take this experiment seriously? Like Jesus, you know?
And thinking about it, also, there are in the United States, but also in Europe, there
Mm,
are recreated villages. So in the United States, we have something called Plymouth Plantation, which is a
mm,
recreation of the first settlement by the Puritans in the Boston colony. And
mm,
everyone there, and they represent the Native American side as well. And so
mm,
they've actually rebuilt the Native American village as it was based on the archaeology and the knowledge that we have, obviously. And they've rebuilt also the Puritans settlement. So we're talking architecture and clothing circa 1620,
mm,
and they are full immersion. You go to that village and they are living and talking like they are from the 17th century. They don't talk about anything modern. If you ask them
mm,
and they'll talk to you, but if you ask them a question about something that
mm,
is beyond the scope of their 1620 selves or 1621 selves, because this is after they succeeded, not so 1620s, not where they all died in the winter, but after they all died, the ones who survived, um, they're talking.
mm,
They'll answer you in a manner that would have been appropriate and with a syntax that would have been appropriate for someone from the 1620s. So if you ask them about a car, they'll pretend ignorance as to what you're talking about, but then they'll say, "Do you mean a cart?" For instance.
mm.
So is that LARPing? No, it is a living
Yeah.
history village where they've gone full immersion. So what is the difference between LARPing and immersive living history? I guess is my point, right? Is it a question of the degree of your kit, of the authenticity of kit? Where do we draw that line?
Mm. Yeah, that's definitely interesting. All right, like because I know, all right, the history of everything. They're quite strict when it comes down to the rule sets that they have. Although sort of stuff, they are very strict and so on. The clothing itself, like I've seen the event, and it is quite clearly a LARP event. But it's on saying that they're very strict on what they're wearing and stuff. Now, Rachel, you could probably still tear them all apart because you're
Uh,
quite good at that. Uh, but from my standards, I think they're quite strict, which is a good thing for me because I like all that kind of stuff. And just to add a comment there to the comment section, good evening to everybody who's joining us now, coming
yeah,
home from work. How are you all doing? Sorry for not being in and saying hello to you guys earlier,
yeah,
but
that's true.
not trying and go on there,
Yeah,
Rachel.
well, welcome to our medieval buzz, everyone. This is our weekly slash sometimes bi-weekly live stream where we talk about topics relevant to the medieval living history world, and we answer your questions about life in the Middle Ages and history in general. And so someone brought up
Mm,
the question of whether I was, or commented that I was cosplaying someone. Yeah, I don't feel like I'm cosplaying, especially because, you know, all the research I do from primary sources into also how people interacted and the kinds of activities they did socially and then actually recreating them. So, but that's not a criticism of cosplaying. That's more me responding to possibly the tone of the comment, which I don't know because I couldn't see the comment because gremlins.
mm,
Yeah. Oh, hello from Melbourne.
Oh, good
Thank you for
joys.
joining
My
us.
internet slowed down
Fantastic.
slightly because of the heat.
Oh, that's okay. Judith, thank you for joining us this morning from Melbourne. Awesome. I know it's the middle of your week, so I appreciate, I don't know, is this your lunch break? Are you here on your lunch break? Yeah. So,
Melbourne.
there
My
is,
short that just went up is actually on Melbourne.
oh, is it? That's fun. The funny thing about I feel like I think the living history community, the reenactment community, tends to attract people who are more likely to be on the spectrum and therefore also more likely to have less flexibility about their approach to anything. Um, you
Mm,
know, I believe that in reenactment and living history, people should be allowed the flexibility to find their own authenticity journey. And you and I have talked about this before. What counts as perfectly authentic? That's that's a bottomless pit of hell. If you really want to fall down the pit of perfect authenticity, you can, but don't think there's a bottom because there isn't, because you can always make your ensemble one more level of authentic. Right? You can go from purchasing commercially manufactured cloth to cloth that's woven by a master weaver. Then you can go from there to, well, was that cloth woven out of wool that comes from an heirloom sheep breed, from a sheep breed that would have existed in the Middle Ages? Okay, then from there, was that sheep fed using grass and fodder that a sheep in 15th century England would have eaten? Right? Like, you can just keep going down and down and down the pit. There is no perfect authenticity. Each group gets to decide for themselves what counts as, authentic enough for our event. For example, the case of the Barons Wars. Yes, Hanson?
Are you a historian? It's been asked several times.
Oh, are you a historian? Are we historians, Philip?
I consider myself. This is always an argument because we're outside of the academic circle. I
Yeah.
consider myself a historian. Rachel, sometimes you don't consider. I consider you a historian. You don't consider yourself a
I mean, no,
historian,
I
but I
do. Like,
consider myself a historian. Go on.
it depends on what the definition is, right? That word historian,
Yeah.
different people actually define that differently. Are we in academia? No. No, not currently. Maybe we will be again. We have been, and we could be again, but we aren't currently. Are we in contact? And do we discuss and debate and share information with academics? Absolutely, 100%. I'm talking to PhD historians in a variety of topics on a regular basis. They respect my work, by the way, even though I only have a little bachelor's degree. So are we historians in the sense of that we study history using primary sources, come and analyze, come to conclusions, reevaluate our past assumptions? Yeah, Philip, then I would call us both historians, if that is your definition of historian.
Like, I consider myself a historian because I'm doing historical projects right now on the Wars of the Roses and on 10th century Ireland, which are paid for. So I am a paid historian. So I would consider myself a historian right now. And I would also consider myself a historian when I was back doing tourism, because I did do pop history tours. But at the same time, I also did academic standard, well, good high standard tours as well over in Kilmallock. So I would consider myself even a historian when I was doing the tourism. But if you're going, and myself and the wife have had arguments about this in the past, like, would you just consider academics historians? Because if you're a historian just because you're inside the academic circle, then no, I wouldn't be considered a historian then.
Yep.
So I would be pretty frank in the fact that I'm outside of the academic circle, but at the same time, I am a paid historian. So if you want to define like, oh, well, you're a historian, if you're being paid for doing historical research, yeah, I consider myself a paid historian. But at the same time, I'm not going to give you, because I'm outside of the academic circle right now, I can't give you the standard that the academics have,
Yeah, it's very interesting. I think even academia is starting to recognize the value of independent scholars, because this is a term I've recently come across when I am trying to get access to original extant garments here in Korea, because I'm I am in the midst of an academic project with the world's renowned expert on historical Korean fashion. She and I are working together to research 16th century Korean clothing and how it was made. And when
Mm,
I'm filling out the forms to access these garments, one of the options, one of the ways that I can identify myself is independent scholar,
mm,
right? That option didn't used to be there if you wanted to, access a book at a library, for a rare book at a library. Independent scholar wasn't always an optional field. It was
mm,
either student at a university or an institution of higher learning, a professor, or PhD. And if you weren't any of those options, too bad.
mm,
But now I'm seeing independent scholar as an option all over the place on, for collections controlled by Harvard University, by one of the colleges of Oxford or one of the colleges of Cambridge. So what that tells me is that academia is also coming to recognize the value of independent scholars working outside of academia, that we actually have something to contribute just because we're not sitting in a library, in an office, in
mm,
somewhere in Massachusetts, that we have something to contribute. So, are we historians? Depends on your
mm.
definition. I sometimes view myself as a historian.
Mm. Depends how I feel that day.
Right? It
What
depends.
was it
It depends
called?
on it
Billy,
depends
just to
on how
answer your
bad my
question there.
imposter syndrome is.
If my thing isn't breaking up completely, yeah. It, what was it called? If my laptop isn't bloody breaking up and overheating, just to answer Billy's question there. What period are you talking about? I'm not actually like it's my wife who mostly specializes in the archaeology side of things. I'm just wondering, and I could help you out if you could give me the dates, because if you're talking about early medieval finds in Ireland predating what was it called? The Viking Age, you'd be wanting to talk to Shane Kent down in Cork. And then if it is in the Viking Age itself, I'm trying to remember his blasted name. He works up in University College of Cork. Without hesitation, definitely get in contact with the archaeological department in UCC. If it's a find from the Viking Age upwards. If it's up around the High Middle Ages, probably get in contact with Ardor Maynooth University. If it's High Middle Ages, if it's late medieval period, I'd probably get in contact with probably Trinity College maybe or something. But if it's early medieval period, Bronze Age, what was it called? It's the archaeological department in UCC would be the people you want to get in contact with. High Middle Ages, probably Maynooth University, but that's outside my field of expertise. Is probably another department that does a way better job, and it depends where you have to find. So it's like where's the location, and also give me just a second there. I'll quickly look that up. And also, what date is it from? Because the dating is super important. Because even if you're dealing with an archaeologist, a medieval archaeologist, every medieval archaeologist has their own field of expertise. So it's the kind of where and when job of it, like where you date it to. If it's just up in the air, um, like where did you find it? Did you find it by yourself? Because you could get in Ireland. You could, if you don't report it to a museum, you could get into trouble. So if you found it by
Oh, is
yourself,
is
I
he
would go to
talking
a
about a
museum
find?
first.
Is
Yeah.
I must have missed a comment. Did he find something out in a field somewhere?
Yeah, it says the comment says, I found some archaeology, Philip. Do you know any archaeologists? By law, if you're in Ireland, by law, if you find anything that could be an archaeological find, it looks iron. But yeah, you need to go straight to a museum and report it to the museum because it's against the law for you just to find something and not report it to the museum, because then that's stealing from because all the archaeological finds and everything, because of the way Ireland functions. In England, if you find something, that's your property. That's
Yeah.
not how Ireland works. If you find something, it is within the public domain, and that means you have to go to the museum and report it, and then you have to go from there because it doesn't. It's not necessarily your property. It could be, I'm trying to word this correctly because it's not how Ireland functions, and it's the same thing in Iceland as well. because Ireland is a very communal society. It's not like England where it's like a lot of things is private property. Ireland and Irish people don't kind of think as kind of individual the
Yeah.
way that England does. So if you find something, even our laws kind of reflect that. If you find something, it's not you as an individual, it's more community. So you need to go to the museum and check with them to see what they want to do from there, and what you guys have to follow by law. So if it's a find in Ireland, go down to the local museum and see what they want to do from there, instead of going to an archaeologist. Because the reason why I say that is because there's a few archaeologists who don't have any problems with reporting you to the police, which I don't want to happen. So go down to the museum first before you do
Yeah.
anything else.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I agree with that approach to cultural heritage, cultural treasures, so to say. They don't
Mm,
belong to any one person, right? They
yeah.
belong to everyone. They should, and
Mm,
I hate it when I think about how many amazing works of art, how many amazing books from the
mm,
Middle Ages are in private rich people's collections, and they'll never see the light of day.
no.
You'll never see them in a
Yeah.
museum. We have no idea even if they exist, right? How many, it's
Mm,
very interesting how many old masters have been coming to the light over the last couple of decades as certain wealthy rich people die, and their heirs inherit this
mm,
art, and it's not to their taste, so they end up putting it on auction on Christie's. And so suddenly we're like, oh, we've just discovered a new Van der Weyden that we had no idea about because it's been in private hands for hundreds of years, right? So I definitely, I
mm,
actually agree with the idea that if you unearth an archaeological find, you should first have the option of it being put on a display in a museum where everyone can see it, rather than it just becoming a
mm,
piece of private property. Now,
mm.
I feel like
Oh,
Britain actually
100%.
has a good the UK actually is a decent, what I would call a medium approach to that, because they now have this
Mm,
scheme where the idea is you find something, you bring it to them, and I think this, you don't get to keep it automatically. I think you have to actually show it to the museum, um, and then although I'm less clear on
mm,
they made some changes to this, but basically they will offer you market value to buy it from you if it's considered something that's,
yeah.
rare or unique, and that should be added to the national treasures, the collection of archaeological treasures, which I think is a really good idea, that because that way it encourages people to keep mudlarking, and it encourages
Yeah.
people to keep metal detecting in the hopes that they'll find a
Mm,
treasure and earn a lot of money. And it also actually brings more and more treasures, medieval pieces especially, to light. I mean, I don't know how
mm,
many beautiful, not so many, but over the last couple of years, there've been a couple of amazing medieval ring finds that have like still
mm,
had the diamond in them or still had a ruby in them, and they were unique in the way they were made. So it wasn't just another stirrup ring, it was a unique kind of ring. And
mm.
it only came to light because of that scheme, and because, the the British cultural authorities offered them a pretty nice chunk of money for it.
Mm. Yeah, I'm not special. Like, I don't specialize in England. I just have experience from what happened in the Battle of, what was it? Bannockburn. Oh my God, what is it called again? The 10th century
Bannockburn?
happened.
Oh no,
No,
not Bannockburn.
it could be that one. It's the 10th century battle, the really super famous one that has the men of Dublin, the Gald Gael in it, and
Wait,
Banbrough. That's the one. The Battle of
Philip,
Banbrough.
what is this in response to?
Archaeological finds. The problem is
Oh,
that
okay.
it's a complete mess when it comes down to first off identifying the battle, because they have found 10th century finds that kind of look like they would fit in the Battle of Banbrough. And you have a lot of local historians and stuff, metal detector historians, who have a fair idea what the battlefield is, and they keep reporting it to professional archaeologists. But the problem is, because they dug it up from the ground, it is very, very difficult to actually confirm
Yeah,
this
you
from
can't date it anymore.
yeah,
Once it becomes much harder to date anyway. Once you remove something from its layers, that's problematic. Of course, in the case of a lot of these mudlarkers in England anyway, they tend to be
mm,
in fields, and
yeah,
the item has already been plowed up, right? That's why
Yeah.
it's at a level where it can be found. So it
Mm.
isn't in its original archaeological layer anyway. Yeah,
Yeah.
but it can be very challenging to date pieces if you don't have, if one doesn't already have a large enough body of that kind of piece that it
Mm.
can be reliably placed as belonging to this, this era. If it's a unique piece, then it can be very tricky to date it because if it's
Yeah.
out of its archaeological layer.
Yeah, like that stunning that battlefield is a mess because we can't confirm exactly. There's a lot of metal detector historians who argue exactly where the location is because people are finding various spots, and I don't think any solid archaeological work has been done there. And also, they're terrified that the majority of it has already been kind of metal detected as well, which has
Right.
kind of ruined the finds. Like there's some guy, a professional archaeologist, I think in the last 20, 30 years, went down to a metal detector's house, and his house was packed with endless amount of Banbra finds, and they were literally from the 10th century. He dated it to the 10th century, and his house was packed with it. So it's like you're getting yourself into these kind of situations when the law is just nilly willy, but at the same time, at least it's been reported. This
Yeah.
archaeologist was able to go into his house and not afraid of being arrested. Where in Ireland, as I was saying to you guys just there, trying to report it to an archaeologist, the good chance is that the likes of O'Brien, for example, O'Brien from University College of Cork, he wouldn't even hesitate to have you arrested. In fact, would you believe it? I was on a tour where somebody was metal detecting in the background, and O'Brien was inside of a castle at the time. He jumped out of the window, the second floor of a window of a castle, while he was giving us a tour to chase a metal detector. And the fellow who was doing the metal detecting seen O'Brien and ran away. That's how passionate O'Brien is with it. So if you went to O'Brien, he'd ring the police. He would just get up the phone and say, "Oh, I have a person with me right now." So you might find yourself in prison. So I would definitely say go down to the museum, as the law says, and report it there. So that's the difference between England. At least in England, you could go down to an archaeologist, and there's more
Yeah.
kind of communication between metal detectors and archaeologists.
Yeah,
Where
big
in
time.
Ireland, it's still frowned upon. Like I know an academic in the University of York, and he hates metal detecting. He's
Oh, yeah.
very passionate against it. So the communication is there, but I wouldn't say it's the greatest. But
Oh,
in
no.
Ireland, it's yeah.
But at least on the legal side, right?
Yeah.
There's definitely more leeway there.
Yeah.
You couldn't just call the police and say this man was mudlarking, and the police will go, yeah.
Mm. But when it comes down to the archaeo, just going back over to Billy again, it depends on the site where the location is. Definitely get in contact with the university, the archaeology department. Like that's what the department is for. And on top of that as well, if you do find anything, museums, and especially the archaeology department of your closest university is definitely a place to get in contact with. Give them an old email. They're quite quick to get back to you on various inquiries and stuff. Like that's what the archaeology department is for. That's what they get taxpayer money for. So I definitely would get in contact with them for those sort of questions, for sure. And let me see. I'll answer some more of those questions. It's Murphy. Had a long line somewhere. Actually, I'll just fly up there. Because are you asking about the Murphy clan? Just looking at the comment sections there. There's a good few comments on the Murphys. I don't have your name. I sent a comment on your name. I wish I had. My oldest brother's name is Murphy. Oh yeah.
Okay, we're back. Thank God. I can see my chat again. I think maybe not. I don't know. Could someone from the Creative Contessa come if you're on YouTube comment to let me know if I can see the comments again? I refreshed the screen hoping it would bring my chat back.
Did it work?
I don't know. I can't tell. Because I think it will only show things going forward rather than things that were in the past. Anyway. Okay. Other buzz. Let's moving that. Unless were you in the middle of answering someone's question, or were we done with
I'm
that
kind of
topic?
confused. I'm just confused on the comment section because I'm not sure if they're talking about the Murphys or not, the clan. If you are interested in clans and stuff, definitely pop on over on the weekend. That's mostly when we talk about Irish clans and dynasties. My channel over at Irish Medieval History is definitely the place to be on the weekend. And what else do I have to talk about? Oh yes, that's what I want to talk about as well. Is the recent work that's happening over on in Australia. They
Australia
have
or Austria?
Australia over in
Australia.
Australia.
Okay.
Yes. There is actually we have a copy of the Tudor Danann, which is written right. You have to bear with me. Bear with me for a second. The manuscript itself is written in 1862. Okay, so the manuscript is written in 1862, and you're thinking to yourself, surely it's not a medieval book. Well, it was actually a copy of a book that no longer exists, right? So we've sort of talked about this before. Yesterday, what was it? What was it? Last Friday, we were talking about how Saint Bridget's manuscript,
Yeah, it's a
the
copy of a
original,
copy.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's a copy of a copy. So Saint Bridget's manuscript, the one we have today is the one that's in the Book of Armagh, and that was written in 800 AD. But somebody, a monk, sat down and he copied the manuscript from what was it, 550 AD. So the one we have today from the Book of Armagh is a copy from 500. What was it? 550 AD. Okay. Now, in 1862, they did exactly the same thing, right? Because of the fact that, certain people have a tendency of burning medieval manuscripts,
They
somebody
do.
thought it would be an absolutely wonderful idea, and thank God he did it, in 1862 to sit down and copy a medieval manuscript from the, what was it called? The 14th century. So in the 14th century, in the period of the Gaelic resurgence, there was a book of the what was it, the Tom by Cooley, right? So there's actually multiple versions of the Tom by Cooley, but he decided to copy the version from the 14th century, which is great because we're missing tons of literature from the 14th century. So it is
Yeah.
absolutely brilliant that this guy decided in 1862 to sit down and copy that manuscript. Now,
Oh, yeah,
the
right.
14th, sorry,
1862. That's before the 1920s,
yeah,
before the archives fire in Dublin.
yes, yes,
Yeah.
yes, yes,
Yeah,
yes.
that is.
That's exactly it. That is exactly it. So we don't
Yep.
actually know what happened to the 14th century one. It probably was burned in that fire. But regardless, the version from the 1862 is actually surviving. We actually do have a copy of it. And it is actually right now in Australia. So somebody decided it would be a great idea to get it away from these mad people in Ireland. And because of all the politics that was happening in Ireland at the time, and bring it over to Australia. So it is actually over in the University of Melbourne today, right? And they decided, what was it, in the last 2 weeks to digitize it. So now they've gone off and they copied all the pages, and all the pages now are up on the internet. Now, in fairness, it's only digitized, it's not out to the public. So as of right now, I have not seen the entire, I've seen snippets of it, but I haven't seen the entire book digitized and out to the public. It's actually under copyright, and it's under, I think it's only available on for private for the University of Melbourne for the time being.
So wait, it's how is it under copyright? Which part is under copyright? By all copyright rules, the book itself should be out of copyright.
Yeah.
So what exactly are are they copywriting the images? I guess
I
that's
think it's the
possible.
images. Yeah, I think it could be the
Yeah,
images itself.
right.
Because when I was putting together that short this morning on that subject, it kept popping up copyright, copyright, copyright. And they're fresh copyrights. They've only been copyrighted in the last 2 weeks. So I think you're bang on. I think it's the image itself that's copyright, not the
Right.
book. So yeah, it's funny. And that's under private collection on the internet. So it is digitized. But when I went to go, unless somebody can find it out to the public right now, as of right now, when I was looking into it,
Hmm.
it was only for members of the university that could look at it.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the usual problem, right? You know, sometimes we find these great sources, and then we can't really share them around in truth, because if we do, we'll get slammed by the YouTube copyright monster.
Yep, it's because there's a demand for it, a massive demand on it right now. And what was it called? The wealthy are using this for status. You know, the wealthy don't like. I'm not even going to start bitching about it. But regardless, it's not even a thing of them being educated on the subject. They just think it's, oh, this is a really cool sword, or this is a really cool this or that. And it's like, oh Jesus, stop that, stop. Um, so yeah, it is quite funny because it's the same thing with the Scottish War of Independence as well. If you remember last week, I got kicked at the side because of
Hmm.
the fact that I did do a lot of work on the Scottish War of Independence.
Right.
And although I gave credit to all the original academics, such as Sean Duffy and various other academics as well, and they knew I had, done up all those videos back in, what was it, 2020. So they're fully aware of it. But the problem is now is that third party companies have gone
Yeah.
off and bought all of Sean Duffy's, not just Sean Duffy's
Yep.
work, but other academics' work as well, to do with the Scottish War of Independence. Myself and the wife think that the entire copyright around that was like, must have been just in, kind of one box of copyrights and stuff. A third
Right.
party came in, seen it was for free, and then just bought up all the copyrights around it. So I kind of got kicked in the bum last week to do with anything to do with the Scottish War of Independence, because now all that work is now under copyright infringement. So I had to go and alter and play around with it, and I still have to alter and play around with some more to make sure my channel doesn't kicked in the bum again. Because I'm still on a warning right now for what was my original
YouTube.
warning? Oh yeah, for the same thing. Actually, the
Right.
copyright around
Yeah.
the 17th century, because we were
Ugh.
looking at what originally was free videos to do with the 17th century, just out of
Right.
curiosity. I put the video on, and I get kicked in the bum for it, and I'm like, gee.
Right. Yeah, it's really hard to be a creator these days. I mean, I have dance videos on my YouTube channel. I have full length dance tutorials, and the recordings. I actually am friends with the musicians who recorded the music, who composed the music, who recorded it, who hypothetically should be the copyright holders, but because they published their albums through this company called CD Baby, but long time ago. CD
Yeah.
Baby has now been going through and claiming all the copyrights on those videos, even though I have a letter of permission from the musicians. And I go and I try to argue it, like I'll dispute it, and sometimes YouTube will accept it, and sometimes they'll say sorry, but the creator has decided that they will stand on their copyright, so they're going to share revenue on your video. And
Oh, yeah.
usually when that happens, I usually take the video down. I make it not publicly available. I make it so that it's a members only perk, because I'm clearly not going to be getting any actual revenue for it being public.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
good on you, YouTube, but now you're going to get less revenue because it's only going to be my members who get to see it, or my patrons who get to
It's
see it.
insane. It's
Yeah.
insane because of the fact that exactly what you said there. That I've heard of that happening a dozen times now on YouTube, where YouTube is making up its own copyright laws, which goes against everyone else's copyright laws. And this isn't the first time that you even have people that compose their own music. They would put it onto you, and this only happens on YouTube. I've never heard of this happening on Spotify. I have never heard of this happening on MySpace. This only ever happens on YouTube, where I will construct my own music. I haven't done this personally myself, but someone else will construct their own music, put it onto YouTube, and a third party company will suddenly buy the copyright, undermining my originally copyright. Oh, and
Yep.
you could own the copyright to this, but YouTube will be like, oh, no. That third party owns more rights than you do, because YouTube, there's dirty stuff happening in the background at YouTube. The fact that they'll fight for a third party company is like, what
Yeah,
shady stuff are you up to, YouTube?
over
Huh?
the creators. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is what it is. It is sadly the ecosystem in which we must operate. You know, there's all kinds, some alternatives to this, but the reality is that all of them have their own downsides as well. And they don't have the same reach that YouTube does, right? As you and I know. Yeah. Oh wait, where are you? You're gone. Why are you gone? You should still be there.
Pull me back in.
I don't know. I don't know what happened. Why did it do that? Why are you like this? Um, hmm. So here.
What I
Oh, wait,
normally
there
do
it
is,
is.
oh, yeah, happy days.
Yeah, I found it. Yeah, there it should. There
Ah,
you
there I
go.
am.
Okay,
Happy
brilliant.
days.
Why didn't you say you weren't there? I just
I just,
realized you weren't there. I was looking at my
oh
sewing, and then I
no.
look up, and it's just me talking to a disembodied voice. Um, okay, so let's see.
Just,
Were there any questions?
just, oh yeah. Just a quick question there.
Yeah.
Just a quick question there. Does Eleanor only have two books out? Dr. Eleanor from God Medieval. She only has two books out, which is Once and a Future. What was it? We can say it's sex, can we? Once and a Future Sex. And also, she has her other book on Middle Ages by Eleanor, Dr. Eleanor from God Medieval. She only has two books out. I thought she had way more books.
Yeah. I actually, I am ashamed to say I have not actually read any of Eleanor, Dr. Yanaga's,
Mm.
Dr. Yanaga's books, so I can't actually speak to any of them. I do know I love listening to her lectures, though. Um, you know, I
Yeah.
think she's
Her
great. I think
lectures are absolutely phenomenal.
we definitely need more historians like her in the world. Also because she isn't stodgy.
Mm.
She does not get bound up
Yeah.
in the actually, right? Like she's actually
Yeah.
looking to bust the myth. She's looking to break out of she's not allowing accepted um, you know, understanding and knowledge to be the edge of her knowledge, right? She is trying to push the state of knowledge by looking at new resources, by reconsidering the sources we already have. So I admire her greatly. Dr.
Mm.
Yanaga is who I want to be when I grow up.
Yeah.
Right.
Because I
So there was
know she's working on the. Oh, go on.
no, go ahead, because it's going to take us in a new direction. There was a question. Go on.
I she's right now she's working on the video game because she was on YouTube again this week talking about the video game she's the historian with, which is Crusader Kings 3. Because they're doing a new season, they're doing like chapter 5 of this video game where they're going to be covering what was it, the Silk Road, which she was referring to as the Silk and Silver Road. So she'll be talking about that and all the chapters to do with that one in the video game she works with, which is Crusader Kings 3, and also By God Alone, where she'll be talking about the Republican of the Italian states. So I know she was talking about this week as well, which is quite exciting stuff. I don't know if Rachel, have you played what was it called, Crusader Kings 3?
No, the reality is I don't have time for games.
Yeah, it can be
I
quite
haven't
difficult.
I haven't played a video game since I played Riven in
Mm,
1999.
yeah, that's
So
about right.
so no, I don't have time for it. I don't
It's
have time.
fun. Yeah, it's fun. My wife Yuki, she also had barely any time as well, but she finds it very addictive as well. She hasn't played it in the last 3 months or so, and has played very little of it. But she found it very addictive, and actually had to just stop. It is one of those story kind of games where you read text and then it gives you
Right, yeah.
choices at the bottom, and then you click at the choice. That's
Right.
the kind of game it is. You play as
Yeah.
what was it called, a medieval noble, and you can play as a noble from Ireland all the way over to Japan. So you can pick anywhere in the world to be a noble, and then from there it gives you various choices on how to run your court, how to run the administration. But it's mostly focused on the role playing aspect of, it gives you an entire whole load of text, and
Hmm.
then at the very bottom it gives you choices and stuff. And I know the staff from Gone in Medieval are always working on the video game as well. So it is very fun, but it is very addictive. And I know a lot of women, because most of the time when these medieval games come out, it's more male orientated.
Yeah, it
This
is. That's
game,
true.
because it can, it's like reading a Philip Gregory book or something. It's got a huge female backing. So if you're a woman who's interested in video games and stuff, I would definitely say give Crusader Kings 3 a go. It's got a large female fan base in there because of the fact that it's got a lot of role playing involved compared to more of the male side of games like Total War, for example. Total War is a medieval game as well, but it's got a much more bigger male fan base compared to Crusader Kings 3 because Crusader Kings 3 is more role playing stuff. So if you're into more of the role playing and the court life of the medieval world, Crusader Kings 3 is definitely one you should have a look at least. So it's good. It takes a while to get used to it just because they try to be as authentic as possible, which means you'd have to understand how family dynasties work, how, when you pass away, who takes over next. Because in the game, you have to sort out all the administration on who takes over next. In the Total War games, it automatically does that for you.
Oh, that's fun.
Yeah, and it becomes a mess because people fight over things. So if you decide, oh, I'm going to give this heir all this stuff, the other heirs will get mad and they'll plot against you. They will try to poison your food.
Oh, Jesus.
Yes, that's why it's so good. This is why people end up getting addicted to it.
I get bored sitting and doing nothing. I need to be making something. I need to be creating something. I need to be reading something that's enriching my mind. Games bore me. They really do. The reason I was able to play Riven, because that's part of the Myst series, these were puzzle solving games where you're specifically solving lots of brain teaser puzzles. And I enjoyed that. But I would rather be actually making the clothes myself, not having my avatar make them virtually. I'd rather be doing the thing myself. I'd rather be doing immersive living history where I am role playing a countess.
Yes.
And we are actually talking like we're discussing dynastic machinations. I'd rather do that in real life. I don't want to do it on a video game.
Yeah.
So I've been playing dress up in olden days since I was like 3 years old. So video games have no appeal for me. They really don't. I don't even necessarily enjoy playing games because I'd rather be crafting or creating something in that time than just sitting. Like I'm talking about board games, like where you're actually interacting with people. There's very few board games that can keep that can keep my interest. I have to be sewing or doing something while playing it for it to keep my interest. So that's just not me. I'm just not a game kind of person. There's one exception. And that is a 15th century card, the 15th century origin to the game poker.
I haven't played
a game called Pochen in German, or Gleek in French is one of the names for it. And it's actually a 3-round card game that involves both chance, like how well dealt, just how lucky you were in the cards you got. But also there's a strategy, because there's a middle round that's basically like poker where you bet on having the best hand, and it's actually just of a kind. It's not the usual Hoyle suits. And then the third round is a discard round that involves strategy.
Yeah.
But it's a very expensive game because it has a board. And just to buy into the game, to play one round, you have to put one coin in 8 little pockets, 8 little bowls on the board. So just to even start, this would have been a very, very expensive game. Just to get your ante up is already expensive. And then you've got a round where you actually bet. So that's even more money. So you can tell this is a game that was not enjoyed by people who didn't have means. And, it can get really strategic, and there's a lot of backstabbing possibly. So it's almost
nice.
Yeah, it's a really fun game. It's great. It's one of, now when I'm at a 15th century immersive event, I will play that and I will focus on that because the interactions are interesting, because it's not just roll the dice and move your piece, Like there's actual thinking that's happening. So, which is not to say there isn't thinking in other games. I don't mean to say that. It's just that other games don't hold my interest.
Yeah, I can see why. Because I love chess. I'm a huge chess fan. Terrible at chess, by the way. Because we starts an argument with my wife. Because Yuki she assumes because I play so much chess, I'd be good at chess. And then she ends up beating me. And I'm like, but I don't study chess. You see, this is the difference. I never studied chess, where my wife would study. She knows tactics and stuff in chess. And I just play chess for the giggle of it. Like, I do not take chess seriously. I should. To be honest with you, I actually should sit down and actually study chess. Because there's some amazing tactics out there. And I have no problems with, I just never have sat down and actually studied chess. That's the problem though. So my wife, who barely even plays chess, can actually beat me because she does, strategy. When she starts doing moves, she does, strategies and stuff. And she didn't even spend long doing studying and stuff. She just likes to read books, and she's read a few chess books. So when she deploys herself, she knows what she's doing.
Yeah.
So I do
That's
love chess, but I wouldn't
Ryan.
say I'm good at it.
Ryan used to be on chess on the competitive chess team. So
Oh well.
he's actually engaged in such showy shenanigans as playing three people at once late at
Oh
night at an
wow.
event and beating them all.
Mm.
So yeah, he's that kind of chess player. He's Mr. Strategy. Like and yeah. When I'm like you, if I play it, I'm just playing it for the giggles, right?
Yeah,
I don't
this is exactly
think
what I
about
do.
all those maneuvers and combinations, and yeah, that's Ryan, 100%. So wait, there was a question. So someone had a
Go on.
question about if I'd seen the recent Bernadette Banner videos. There's a Victorian Edwardian era costumer named Bernadette Banner, who's
Yeah.
way bigger. Her channel's huge. She's huge.
Mm.
She started her channel back in like 2010 when it was easy to build your YouTube channel. Right. So now she's a serious YouTube costumer, as we call her.
Okay.
She just produced a video on linen, comparing different kinds of linen and showing how modern linen is basically garbage. I haven't actually seen the video. People keep sending it to me. I don't have time to watch the video, guys. I'm too busy doing my own research. But her conclusions are probably mine, which is to say that Philip, have you ever touched like linen bed sheets, like your great grandmother's linen bed sheets?
Yeah, there's a massive difference.
Right. Like it's smooth and it's tightly woven and it's really just so sturdy. It just lasts forever, right? Whereas modern linen now, I mean, I'm already starting to wear through this, and I just made this a couple of months ago. So, linen now is garbage. It's crap. It is absolutely terrible. My best recommendation for anyone, honestly, is if you can find vintage linen sheets from 100 years ago or more. If you can find vintage linen, it will, even though it's 100 years old or more, it will last so much longer than the crap you can buy now, for the most part.
Yeah, there is a massive, huge difference. I got into trouble actually in Ireland, where I picked up modern linen, and people were like, "That's disgusting. Get that off.
Get that out of here."
Yeah, that's when I first started. What was it called? Living History and stuff, where I didn't know the difference in layers, different types of linen and stuff. I had to get my linen from Poland. This is where I got my linen from. And I have a really good linen tunic from the 10th century as well. It's based off a Danish find. And that one, like you could, if you were to fill modern linen against this linen, oh my God, the difference is amazing. And it's how breathable it is. Like, okay, so with modern linen, my sweat sticks to the linen. It doesn't stick to the old linen at all. The old linen is great for being breathable.
I'm wondering what's wrong with your linen. So I don't have that problem with modern linen. I'm wondering if you're wearing linen that's been treated in some way, or if it's or if it has some synthetic, a percentage in it.
Oh, yeah,
I will say that modern linen I've never had the problem with modern linen being unbreathable. I've just had the problem with it being, relatively speaking, crudely woven, poorly woven. The quality of the fibers is much lower. The staple, meaning the length of the fibers, is much shorter, so it breaks down much more quickly. Yeah, and of course, modern linen is generally not tightly woven at all. It's relatively loosely woven compared to, my great grandmother's bed sheets. And if you live in America, you're much less likely to be able to find things like that in secondhand shops. But if you live in Europe and you go to charity shops or secondhand shops or thrift shops, whatever you want to call them, very frequently you can find great grandmother's linen bed sheets because no one wants them.
Yeah.
They're single bed sized. Everyone has a queen size bed now, right? And back then everyone had a twin bed. So they're single bed size, so they're not useful as modern bed linens. they're also just plain white. Who wants plain white sheets on their bed when you can have crazy colors? Why do you need crazy colored sheets on your bed? I don't know, but there it is. So they end up in secondhand shops for like €1 for a beautiful linen bed sheet that is linen.
Yeah.
So you can get some really good deals, but in America you can't. We don't. Yeah. Mostly bed sheets here were cotton anyway by that point, so you can find cotton bed sheets sometimes, but not linen.
Yeah. Just going back up to the comment section there, I like Grim Frost, right? I would say they're about standard, to be honest with you, for their linen tunics and stuff. I have a few linen tunics from Grim Frost as well, the ones that are based in Sweden. I'd hate to put down Grim Frost because they are super, super nice. I just prefer the linen tunics that are made from the Polish vendors that you can only get if you go to their Viking shows in Poland, or you have contacts. I had contacts, so I could get in contact with them there. Grimfrost are good, but there's another button there as well. And if you're doing business with Grimfrost, the problem I haven't been in contact with them for about 5 years now, but the problem I had with them is that they were because they do work for also LARP events and also role-playing events as well. The problem is they don't identify which ones are for the LARP, because there's a massive difference between linen that's made for fantasy and linen that's made for living history. Okay. And, even the way it's made and stuff. So make sure when you're getting in contact with them, make sure you identify, is this linen made for, because it may not be linen if it's made for fantasy, right? Because it could just say linen tunic. What they're meaning is they're just going to give you a white fantasy tunic. So make sure you identify that this is an actual, because that actually did happen to me, by the way, when I first started off, is they sent me some plastic tunic and I was like, what the hell is this? Yeah, and it wasn't even sewn together. It was all done by machine, and I was like, I'll get killed. I will get crucified for this thing. What was it called? So I had to go off and make my own tunic and stuff. You have to get in contact with them and make sure you identify, or at least read the instructions and see if it's actually made of linen. The materials should say 100% linen. Sometimes on top of that as well, they'll say 80% linen and 20% plastic. That's actually a thing, right? So make sure you look into that, or at least give them a call. If you can't call them, a good craft, anyone to do with the good crafting side, you should be able to, contact them whenever, and they should be able to be easily reached for an actual physical conversation. That's always I hate when I can't get in contact with the person that's making my clothing, especially when it costs a good bit of money. Like, that's
really suspect, honestly.
Yes.
If you cannot directly contact the person making your clothing,
I used to.
I wouldn't.
That's the thing with Grimfrost. It's a big company, make lots and lots of money. They're really good for when they take something seriously. They're really, really good at it. But because they are massively involved with the fantasy Viking LARP side of things, and they're also involved with the living history side of things as well, it's really messy. And I just found that like 5 years ago, even like I was working with them between 2015 up to around 2020 before I moved over to Japan, and I just found their work was very haphazard. Some work would be absolutely amazing, some work was just absolutely diabolical, and I couldn't, at times, even the website itself couldn't identify which one was LARP fantasy and what was actual historical stuff. So Grimfrost are funny,
Yeah, I mean, the other danger with the term linen is that linen these days, especially in both the fashion industry and the interior decor world, is also now a color, by the way. Linen is a color. Linen is also now a weave. So I don't know if Kate's still out there, but a friend of mine a couple of years ago moved into a house, and she bought what she thought were linen curtains for her home because they were called linen curtains on Amazon. Linen curtains, and why would she think to check the fiber content when they claimed to be linen curtains? They weren't linen at all. They were 100% polyester, but they were linen look. They looked like linen. So you have to be careful these days when you're buying anything, whether it's fabric or clothing or curtains. You have to check the fiber content because linen is a look, linen is a weave, linen is now a color. But most people don't realize it's actually also a fiber. They just think it's a color or a pattern or something like that. So yeah, you really do have to be careful. And honestly, even if they say it's 100% linen, that doesn't mean it is. You know, that doesn't mean it is. There are plenty of I don't mean this Grimfrost in particular. I mean in general, vendors in general. There are unscrupulous vendors out there. So, you know, that's one of the downsides of shopping for anything online instead of at a brick and mortar store is that you can't touch it, you can't feel it, you can't see if it's actually what it claims to be, if it's actually linen. You can't do a burn test on it virtually. So you might end up spending money on something that is not what you want it to be, and good luck getting a refund in many cases.
Holy clothing. When you say holy clothing, you're talking about linen tunic, is it? What was it called? Does linen shrink? I'm assuming that's what you meant when you said what was it, holy clothing? You're talking about linen.
Linen shrinks. I mean, it doesn't shrink forever. Wool will keep shrinking forever because until there is literally no air left to squeeze out between the fibers, it will just keep shrinking if you keep agitating it. Linen has a maximum shrink point, though. It depends on the linen. It depends on the weave. It depends on the way it was spun. It depends on how long the staple was, you know, the length of the individual linen fibers before it was spun. So linen can have anywhere up to like a 10% shrinkage. So I really do recommend everyone, if you buy fabric, wash it. Wash it, a linen specifically. Philip, whatever you do to the linen before you make it into a garment is what you can most likely safely do to it afterwards.
Okay.
By which I mean, if you buy the fabric, you wash it and dry it on high heat, wash it on hot water, dry it on high heat. Then afterwards, it's very likely that you'll be able to wash your garments on hot water and high heat, and it will be fine. It won't shrink anymore. But if you get your linen and you wash it on cold water and you hang it to dry and then you make it into a tunic and you wash the tunic on high heat with hot water and you dry it on high heat, you're going to end up with a children's tunic. So yeah, whatever you do to the fabric before you before you make it is what you can do after. Wool is the exception. Many wools will never stop shrinking. They will just keep collapsing on themselves until you end up with a brick of wool. So, yeah, keep that in mind.
When it comes down to linen from India, from my experience, I have a lot of really good Indian friends and stuff who are very well educated, but I don't know who makes their clothing and stuff because their clothes are always absolutely amazing. If you look at their silken clothing and their linen clothing, it looks absolutely amazing, but I don't know who makes their clothes for them. And the reason why I bring that up is because in my experience, anyone who's tried to contact me on Facebook, and if you're part of the Living History World, you'll probably get it, where you'll have a vendor who pops in from India and they're making crafts and stuff. But when you click on it, their craft is really, really super, super cheap. So I would be, if you're dealing with vendors from India, I would be super caution. What I would do is try politely ask if you have a friend from India or something, or somebody you know, I would probably ask them like where did they get their silk and linen clothing from. If you're into that kind of stuff, rather than trying to contact random vendors you don't know. Because I always find, especially on Facebook, it's a huge stranger danger side of things, you know, where if somebody contacts you on Facebook, just keep it, you know, the shield up and have an old stranger danger to it. Because to be honest with you, I'm still very uneducated when it comes down to going to the right places to buy really, really, really good Indian tunics, both in silk and in linen, unless Rachel knows.
I mean, so I don't. I prefer to support people in countries that I know have good labor standards,
Yeah.
where I know that people are getting paid a living wage, where I know there is a no slave labor, or at
Mm.
least a minimum likelihood of slave labor. India is not one of those countries. India has a lot of problems with
Yeah.
the informal market, which uses a lot of child labor and abusive child labor. I don't mean like a child is happily sitting there crafting something. I mean they're in a tiny room in the dark,
Yeah.
um, in malnourished and not treated well.
Mm.
So I tend to avoid buying unless I'm in India and I
Mm.
can see the craftsperson with my own eyes and see their working conditions and give them the money directly. I don't tend to buy things that are made in India, so I don't have any good recommendations for that. I know a lot of people in the harness fighting and historical European martial arts community will buy, for instance, riveted mail from India,
Mm.
and because it's super cheap. I
Mm.
will 100% grant you it's super cheap. And some of them have had good luck, and some of them have had terrible luck.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah, I mean, I know one gentleman who, this was a little while ago, a couple of years ago. He does a 12th century impression. So Crusader, he does a Crusader impression. So his
Mm.
his kit is entirely male, right?
Yeah.
Male everything, male hauberk, male chausses, male sabatons, male gauntlets, right?
Yeah.
And he male mittens, I guess. And he bought riveted an entire set of riveted male everything from an Indian producer, and won every single sword shot or weapon shot that he took sent mail jingling off. It just shed like hair, right?
Mm.
Like every single time a weapon landed, more pieces would come flying off, even though it was riveted
Yeah.
technically.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
your mileage will vary.
Yeah, I've come across the exact same thing as well, and I think that's always been a case when it comes down to India. Is you need to have content. Anytime it comes down to any work that comes out of India, you need your own kind of, in my experience, your own kind of personal relationship with certain
Yeah.
cliques and stuff. Don't go nilly willy into India because, especially as you pointed out there, people will sell you just the worst stuff, and you can't turn around and say, oh well, that's India as a whole, because it's not, because
It's
even
not.
within India, even within India, it's very fragmented, as in it's very cliquish. There's loads of cliques even within the Silk Road itself, and I've seen stuff that people have bought, as you point out there. People have bought stuff out of India, and wow, it's some of the greatest stuff you'll see in the
Yeah.
world. But God, they're so bad. And that's just really bad clicks. There's some clicks and they're absolutely dreadful and absolutely diabolical. And that's why I would definitely apply the stranger danger when it comes down to that whole area there of northern India, to identify which ones the decent ones and which ones. Educate yourself in India. Definitely
Yeah,
educate yourself in India.
definitely I am not slandering India,
Mm,
not at all. I'm
yeah,
saying that the mileage of the reenactment community in general has varied.
yeah.
That's a fact. That
Mm,
is a fact. When your brand new riveted male hauberk should not start shedding rings the second you start using it, right? It
mm,
should not. That is not normal.
mm.
So, whereas I think Ryan might actually, so for his new 15th century harness, he bought standard and some other of the male pieces that you should have in the spots where the harness doesn't cover. And I think, was that an Indian manufacturer? Yeah. So that was from India. We haven't actually used it yet, so I
Mm.
can't speak to its durability, but it feels good. It feels quality. It feels like it's good for, so like, again, completely variable,
Yeah,
And the only reason we got it from that supplier is because other harness fighters already had their own experience,
mm.
right? So they could recommend it onward.
Yeah,
Um, but
I've used the skirting.
you've used the skirting, and
It's held up.
okay, so his fald, which is the male skirt that goes under everything, right, and covers the butt and protects the groin. So Ryan's male fald is from India. He has used it in some pretty violent combat, actually, pretty percussive combat, and it has held up. So yeah, it's variable. If you want to buy something from India, I recommend that you get a recommendation from someone who already has bought from that exact same vendor and use the products for a certain amount of time.
Mm. And you guys are right. You're bang on. Vendors all over the world, you need to apply stranger danger to it. Look at the clicks, do your research.
Yep.
Even within your own, this is why they keep screaming it over and over and again. Within your own LARP or living history group, follow their clicks to start with. When you're at the very start of things, before you start building up your own clicks, ask them, who are you buying from? What's your
Yep.
experience buying with them?
Yep.
You're bang on right. Vendors from all over the world, you
Yeah,
need to apply the
absolutely.
stranger danger to. My own
Absolutely.
experience, Maximilian up in York, that guy's a complete fucking idiot. I will. I'm going to scream this from the top of my tree, and this is the thing now. Everybody knows that guy is a complete scam artist and a complete and utter idiot. Never, if you come across a guy from York called Maximilian, he does 10th century clothing, do not buy from him. He is a complete and utter idiot. What was it called? Myself and my wife passionately hate that moron. Do not do business with him. He is a complete and utter scam artist of a fella. And he's proof that, like, even in England, and I have amazing what was it, work in England. I have some of my best stuff. I have amazing tunics from England. I have amazing pants from England. Some of the greatest workers come from England. So I'm not dissing the English whatsoever. I've had some amazing conversations with the English historians from the 10th century. But if it's labeled anything to do with Maximilian, that guy's a complete and utter idiot. And if you turn around and call him an idiot, tell him I said he was an idiot to his face. I absolutely despise the scam artist and the idiot. He's just he should not be in the living history world. He doesn't have any clue about Viking Age, and when he constructs something, it's a complete and utter scam for money. So he's evidence that even in England, you can find complete and utter morons in there.
Yeah, I mean the difference is that between, say, ordering from someone in India and ordering from, say, someone who's local to me, is that, or purchasing someone, from, I see at a medieval market, for instance.
Yeah.
I see the person, they're a real human. I can see them working on the item. I can see the craftsmanship of the item. So yeah, I mean, it's just, we were only talking about India because someone asked specifically about India, but this is true of any any online ordering. Any online ordering, you should be cautious. And just because a vendor might have a business license to operate, say, in the UK, it doesn't mean that the items they are vending were made in the UK. So, you really, it's not, definitely not just India. Absolutely not. I'm just particularly cautious about items that are made in developing nations, especially low income developing nations that have a lot of poverty, because I know that those impoverished workforces are massively abused and mistreated, and that a lot of the money that I would pay for the item doesn't get paid down to the person who actually did the work. It's some rich fat cat who pockets most of it, and I don't want to support that kind of economy.
Yeah. Oh, so, exactly the same.
Yeah.
I always, and it always completely disgusts me as well when I do, because the two of us live in Asia. So I've had experience before where I was giving money, assuming that it was the same fair deal that I saw in Ireland. And then I find out that this money then goes off to something abusive. And I'm just completely disgusted at where my money goes to. So, yeah, that's the thing, is that, as I said it to Yuki, and Yuki was like, that's the problem with Ireland. It's like Newbie Island. Well, Ireland is starting to change now. But when I was growing up in Ireland, and that's what it's nicknamed by a lot of people, because it was so safe back in the 90s. And the problem is that it started to produce a very innocent view of the world. So when you suddenly find out, oh, well, I give my money over there, And then you find out actually when you're in a different country, you can't just assume your finance is going off to something that's all nice and lovey dovey and everyone's
Yeah.
holding hands and stuff. I like so yeah. I would definitely do more, as much research as possible. So you know where your finances is going and stuff. But yeah,
Right.
it is very, very, very complicated because when I was in East Africa over in Kenya, the money it was complicated in the fact that it was still going to children. The
Right.
problem is that the children were coming up, by the way, complaining. I stopped giving my money to something, and it was the children themselves that actually came up and started complaining to me because I
Yeah.
was denying them money. What was it, lunchtime? I was like, oh, well, I'm not paying for this anymore. The child came up to me aggressively and explained he wanted his money to go and feed himself that day. And I was like, oh, okay, so this is how the world works in Kenya. So,
Yeah.
yeah, the thing is, as well, at the flip side of things, sometimes a child wants child labor so he can then feed himself by lunchtime. So it's complicated, you
No,
know?
it is really complicated, and
Yeah.
it's there's again, it's like, well, what are the work conditions? Like, I don't, oh God, do I even want to say this aloud? Um, so in the Middle Ages, we'll connect it to the medieval world. So in the
Yeah.
Middle Ages, children started an apprenticeship. They entered the labor force basically more or less at the age of 7, and
Mm,
that's true at almost all levels of society. So in the level, in the warrior class, when in places where there was such a thing, like that's when they would start their training to become a warrior.
mm,
Their childhood was very short in the Middle Ages, not necessarily, not just because children tended to die
mm,
more often than adults did, but also because that's when they started becoming part of society as a functioning cog in the economy.
mm,
Whether that economy was the warrior economy, whether it was the artisan economy, whether it was the agricultural economy, that is when they started contributing. Whether
mm.
and that doesn't, there weren't factories, so it wasn't like it got in the Industrial Revolution where the working
Uh,
conditions for children were terrible, right?
mm.
That's when they started learning a trade. That's when they started being taught how to do things. So
It was more of an
I
education
don't,
than anything else.
right, but they were still contributing economically to the household,
Yeah.
right? So I don't necessarily think that children being given structured work is a bad thing. It's,
Mm,
what is the kind of work? Is
yeah.
it is it allowing them to grow and thrive as a human, or is it literally stunting their growth because it's destroying their bodies?
Mm.
So like mining, no, children should not be used to mine in any era. Children should
Yeah.
never have been used to mine.
Yeah.
But is it okay for a child at the age of 7 to start learning how to become a weaver? Yeah, 100%. No argument
Mm.
for me.
Yeah. I
Uh,
fully agree with that as well.
so
Because
I
this is
don't,
it. Gone.
yeah, so I don't necessarily think that children in the workforce is a bad thing in and of itself. It's, how is it done?
Mm.
How is it approached? What kind of life, quality of life do they have? Does being in the workforce also allow them an education? Does it
Mm.
allow them to learn to read and write and do basic math so that they have the tools to not be taken advantage of?
Yeah.
Like that's important to me.
Yeah, I was the same as well. It was actually when I was 5. When I was 5 years of age, I was playing with rifles and guns as well. But that's because this was during the Troubles and stuff, and my dad was in the military. So I'm the same as well. I got very used to guns and rifles when I was a child as well. It does depend on your childhood background and stuff because, like, if a child is growing up in Manhattan in New York, maybe it's not so healthy that he's growing up with guns. But if you're living in like rural Ireland and hunting and all that kind of stuff is going on at the same time, I think it is a very, very good idea to have a very healthy relationship with a rifle. And when I say healthy, I don't mean sleeping with the bloody rifle. I mean being able to safely know that you need to respect the rifle. That's what I mean. If you're living in a
Sleeping with
rural
a
area,
rifle.
yeah, don't sleep with your rifle. But what I mean is to have respect for the rifle, as in, like,
Yeah, yeah.
first off, if you were angry, go and do 10 push-ups. Don't go and get daddy's gun and start pointing it at people if you're angry. Or if you're in another situation where, God forbid, you've got a weapon that's on the ground, it's still live, you don't want someone to fall over it, to be able to, as a child, disarm the weapon. I think that's a good idea as well. So I definitely would think, the age 5 upwards, to have respect for a weapon would be a good idea for a child. But at the same time, I see other people on YouTube and it's like, oh, well, I've been around a weapon all my life, and then they're going to sleep with the weapon. And I'm like, okay, I don't think that's a healthy environment.
The fetishization of firearms in the United States is like a whole, that's a deep dive we don't want to take, honestly.
Yeah.
But I will say that, I grew up in a rural community, lots of farmers children were my classmates. And on any given day, the pickup truck parked next to my car when I was in high school and driving myself to school would have deer in the back.
Yeah.
Because they'd gone hunting that morning. And their rifles were inside their car. At least they weren't just on the gun rack outside of the car, but they were inside the car on a gun rack in the back of the pickup truck, right? And that was normal. It was fine. Nothing. We didn't have school shootings where I grew up. But that was before Columbine. Columbine changed everything, right?
Yeah.
1998. So there's, that was that first major high school massacre, right? Where a screwed up student went in with a gun and killed a lot of people and injured a bunch of others. So, I grew up with and I worked on a horse farm, right? I worked on a horse farm from the age of 10 forward, and the horse farm was out in the rural part. And so we had dangerous animals. Sometimes we had rabid animals, right? And so we had a 22 rifle. I knew how to shoot it. It wasn't a thing, right? Yeah. But I didn't think that my life depended on having this gun. I just thought it was nice. We thought it was nice to not have to call animal control every time a rabid groundhog came along,
For sure.
But that's all we used it for. We were protecting ourselves against dangerous animals, not dangerous people. So
I'd say the same thing. I had a huge wake-up call about that when I went over to Alabama, that animals can actually eat you in America compared to in the United States. That was a huge wake-up call
animals
for me.
Can actually eat you. Yes.
Yeah, I was like, what the hell?
I forgot.
Crocodiles, alligators? What the hell is this?
I forgot. Western Europe hasn't really had human predators for hundreds of years.
Yeah, it's funny because we had wolves all the way up to the 17th century, and then the English decided to wipe them out. So, yeah, it is wild. And also, getting back into the comment section again, no, you don't sleep with your sword. It goes into the armory. Your sword goes into the armory. Don't get that sharp thing and start rolling around at nighttime. Jesus Christ. Pain. Ow.
I mean, for one thing, it should be sheath. Like, your swords should always have a very nice, well-tooled sheath that has a wooden interior. It's got a nice molded leather cover. Like, okay, if you really want to sleep with your sword, I guess. But also, why? Why are you doing that?
I said the lads are just joking. I hope they're all joking. No, that goes into the armory. Don't bring your sword to bed.
Jesus Christ, man.
When it comes down to the armory, right? Okay, so in the video game, this is where I'm getting this information from. And actually, this is a good one that Rachel can correct me on. If you're an average guy and you have a weapon, where do you put your weapon? If you're just an average peasant, where do you put your spear after you're done at the end of the day? That just goes somewhere. Like, you don't sleep with your spear, do you? I don't. Anyway.
No. I mean, if you're talking about like on the level of lower level men at arms, right? Men, you're talking about knights. You're talking about the people who sometimes get conscripted to go to battle, but then they go back to their day jobs, right?
Yeah,
like those people.
Obviously, for a knight, I'm assuming that goes into the armory. Once that's done, the sword, the armor goes into the armory.
So if you read, let's talk about the 15th century. If you read the expense accounts, like I'm staring right now at the Howard household books, and probably if I were to, those are the expense accounts from the Howard household became the Duke of Norfolk, was elevated to the Duke of Norfolk by Richard III, right? I have 20 years of expense accounts from his household. And if I were to open randomly, it's likely I'm going to land on a page that talks about the expenses of arming the men he's leading into these various engagements as part of the Wars of the Roses, right? Because it seems that in the 15th century in England, in this case, this peer, it was his task to arm them. It was his task to provide them with armor. It was his task to provide them with weapons. It was his task to feed them and supply them, because it's all in his expense accounts. What that tells me is that it's likely that these men at arms, maybe they didn't get to keep those weapons. Maybe at the end of the engagement, those weapons were all collected up and stored in the Howard Armory, right? So and there's something in the 15th century. You have this peasants start coming onto the battlefield with their farming tools, right? That's what billhooks are. So what would they use their billhooks for when they're not in battle? They would use them for what you normally use billhooks for, which is things involving trees, like cutting branches and pulling things out of the trees and whatnot. So they would just keep using them at that level because they were farming implements. It's unlikely that a peasant is going to be handed a spear, I feel like. Not in the 15th century anyway.
God, I'm very hesitant. Just popping back into modern stuff again, because you guys are talking about having the rifle in your sleeping bag. I consider that really dangerous to do, because when I was in the military, some guy had. First off, I actually think it's if you do get attacked in the middle of the night, I actually think it's faster to have the rifle next to you, because you should have some form of protection over you again to protect you from the elements. So your rifle shouldn't be getting soaking wet. Plus, someone else should already be on watch to make sure somebody's not robbing your rifle. But I actually find it faster to have your rifle next to you in case you're attacked in the middle of the night, to actually just turn around and bang, bang, bang and start defending yourself, instead of trying to pull it out of the sleeping bag. And the second one, we had an incident with the Scots. We were with the Scots at the time, the Scottish Regiment. I think it was the 3rd Regiment Scots when I was in the Irish Regiment. And we were just coming around the side. There was a situation and we had to bugger out, which means we had to leave the area in the middle of the night. And somebody had they had the rifle in the sleeping bag. And I don't know what the hell happened, but he ended up setting off the rifle and the rounds went into his lower body and the leg. Because he hit it on auto. I seen it with my own eyes. All I saw was the flashing because it was nice and dark.
Jesus.
And him screaming. And
yeah, I bet.
Yeah, it was in
screaming.
the sleeping bag. And I don't know what the hell happened, but it was on auto anyway. He was pulling out. And all I heard from this side, I was walking this way. And from my left side, hidden in, because he was just in the cover on the left side, and all I see is flashing going into the sleeping bag.
Why did he have why was it on auto? Why wasn't the safety on?
Yes to everything.
Why?
Yes to everything.
Why? I have so many questions.
Yeah, but I just that's also one of the reasons why I never keep the rifle in the sleeping bag. But like, I know everybody's excuse is, oh, well, it might get robbed. And I know the Marines, because I've been with the Marines as well, and they also keep their rifles in the sleeping bag, and it's all the same stuff. But in my experience, it's faster to use it outside of the bag, because you just need to roll over and bang, 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 defend yourself. Secondly, what was it called? Somebody should already, because the excuse is, oh, it might get robbed. So somebody should be already on watch. Your job is to make sure you're not getting robbed. Okay, that's also by looters, because if you're in Africa, for example, what was it called? There's looters all the time. Your what was it called? Your corporals, your sergeants should have already organized that somebody walks about, making sure looters aren't robbing your rifle and all the equipment. Now, if you're that afraid, have something over it to cover it. Okay, don't just allow it to get robbed. But I'm so hesitant to keep it into the sleeping bag. I'm very, very hesitant about it. Like,
I mean, honestly, I feel, especially military sleeping bags are not particularly roomy. Yeah. So I would be worried about being able to actually access it in a quick enough time versus pulling it out, right? It's a long weapon, right? To pull it out and sight it, aim it and sight it. No, I think I would rather it be next to me outside the sleeping bag, like right next to me,
Yeah.
but not in the sleeping bag. That just, I mean, yeah, I'm not going to go there down the Freudian implications of having a long phallic object in with you in the sleeping
Mm.
bag.
But like ultimately, I'm not going to have an argument about it. Like that's down to
No,
your preference. If you want the rifle in your sleeping bag, that's down to you at the end of the day.
yeah,
But I personally don't
I
feel
wouldn't.
comfortable, especially after seeing that, having the rifle
Jesus,
in the sleeping
God
bag.
damn,
And I
Jesus.
found it, I just being in situations where I've had to defend myself suddenly in the middle of the night, I just found it faster just to roll over with the rifle ready to fight. I have camouflaged and hidden the rifle, so it's not like somebody just walks along and just sees my rifle there. It is hidden to a certain degree, but I'm very paranoid myself. But I've always had the rifle literally right here next to me, so I can just roll and grab it. Um,
Right.
but I assume that that's the same thing as well in the medieval period, where you also have that same kind of paranoia, where people sleep in their own armor, the fear of suddenly getting attacked in the middle
Well,
of the night as well.
well, yeah. I mean, on the other hand, it doesn't. I don't. So it's funny. A friend of mine,
Mm,
reenactor friend of mine, or living history friend of mine from he's from Oklahoma, actually. He just participated in a muster near Washington, D.C., a 15th century themed muster, actually,
mm,
specifically to Nuremberg. They were like super specific. And the muster was where they basically go to the woods for a couple of days and
mm,
they tromp around and do various, activities to kind of simulate the experience of a 15th century man at arms in the Nuremberg area.
mm,
And, the kit had to be of a certain standard, it had to be from a certain time and place.
mm,
But my friend came back and he said he spent 40 hours because he actually, to save on baggage, God bless it, because he had to fly. Oklahoma,
mm,
DC is a huge ass drive. So he flew. He actually wore his 15th century brigandine on the
mm.
plane and he wore it back
Oh
so
boy,
that he wouldn't have to pay for checked baggage.
that's
so that,
hardcore.
so that he wouldn't have to pay overcharge on overweight baggage, right?
Mm,
And so he got back and he commented that he spent 40 hours in his armor and what a great realistic experience. And I'm like, I have never, ever seen primary source evidence of 15th century men at arms, especially with harness, because he's got knightly harness. We're not talking
mm.
low level padded jacks or something like that. I mean, like metal plated brigandine. Weighs a
Wow.
lot, by the way. Um, I've never seen any evidence that it's normal for
Mm,
men at arms in the 15th century to just wear their harness for 40 hours straight.
yeah.
Please tell me, point me to the evidence to that because I haven't seen it. The evidence I have seen talks about armoring up before the engagement and armoring down after the engagement, not
Mm,
just wearing harness for 4 days. So I don't think it was common. I haven't seen evidence of, and in fact, the knights, right? So one of the things about Agincourt is that supposedly the French knights slept in their armor and it made them exhausted for the next day,
oh, that's
right? Like
interesting.
that's what, and I say supposedly because I haven't looked more deeply into it to check on the primary sources on that one. So I'm
Mm,
hedging my bets by saying supposedly. That's
yeah.
one of the things that supposedly exhausted the French knights because they slept in their armor on their horses because it was so muddy that
Mm,
they didn't want their basically they didn't want their kits to get all muddy. So
mm,
I don't know. I haven't seen evidence that that was common to just constantly sleep in your harness. And they had baggage trains for campaigns and engagements. Like they
mm.
had carts that were full of arms and armor. So it depends on the armor, I guess. If we're talking about
Does.
padded jacks, okay,
Mm,
that's just like 20 layers of linen quilted together. So
mm.
I can see them just wearing that.
I
But if we're talking about plate harness,
yeah. I think it depends on your level of paranoia. Because I have come across, I'm sure, I'm going to put everything now I say on the alleged thing, and don't take anything I'm saying seriously, but I'm sure I've come across sources before in the Hundred Years' War where we have times where people are, because it's uncomfortable. I'm confident I've also come across sources where it said it was uncomfortable to wear armor, and that's why they avoided sleeping in it. But at the same time, I'm confident I've come across sources where they did sleep in it when they were paranoid. And being in situations where I was paranoid sleeping, I actually slept better when I had my body armor on, and as you guys are pointing out as well. There's sometimes you guys have your weapons next to you guys as well. When you, like, even in, somebody pointed out there, South California, because there was a lot of criminal activity happening around there. You had a good night's sleep when you had your rifle next to you. There's definitely a thing there in your brain that you feel more comfortable when your rifle is next to you. I suppose in their situation in the 15th century, their sword or their weapon is next to them and their armor is on. There's just a level of, not 100% comfortable, but a certain level of comfortable to be able to suddenly just react if somebody is suddenly on top of you. So I assume there's a level of that there in the 15th century, in the 100 Years' War, where people sometimes feel more comfortable with their armor on. But, in the ideal situation, there's someone else already on watch, and you're in a situation, enough breathable situation, where you should be able to put your clothes on, if you're suddenly attacked. But I think it depends on the situation. That's my opinion.
Well, the other issue with wearing certain kinds of harness nonstop is that certain kinds of harness don't allow you to relieve yourself cleanly.
Oh yeah.
And what it's known that in the 15th century, that in the midst of a battle, if the body actually decided that's what had to happen, then the knights would just do it.
Yeah, relieve themselves. Yeah.
Would relieve themselves in their hosen, right? There was no stopping and copping a squat on a chamber pot, right? We know that happened. So if you're wearing your harness for multiple days, how are you handling some of those bodily functions that can't really be done if you're in harness?
This is the thing. This is what I find hilarious about what you were saying at the very start of the live stream, where we have someone just casually relieving themselves in the 15th century. And it's like,
right.
Okay, when we're having this level of discussion, this is where the problems really kick in when it comes down to relieving yourself, because the same thing happened during the war in Afghanistan, as you know yourself, where soldiers were relieving themselves during combat. And I, to be honest with you, because I'm so used to it, I don't even know if somebody was asking me now, did you relieve yourself? I actually don't remember. It's the heat in the moment and stuff. But the thing is, from the get-go, you have the stinging sensations around it and the fact of the hygiene around it, because the hygiene goes to shite straight away.
Right.
And you also have, it's absolutely terrible. You have to stray away from the get-go. Once you are in a comfortable situation, change the pants and everything has to be wiped clean with whatever you have on you, because God Almighty, it starts to get horrific, especially in that Afghan heat. And you can imagine the same thing is with the heat in France during the 15th century as well. So when you're making those comments where people are in comfortable situations in a settlement and you have a woman just randomly relieving herself and carrying on, no way would somebody do that in a comfortable position. If you're in a situation in the 15th century battlefield where you have to relieve yourself, as somebody who's used to the fighting in I'm not per se Afghanistan because I was over in Kenya, but in a situation where people are relieving themselves, the very first thing they do when they're in a comfortable position, the underwear and pants gets changed and everything is wiped down, because, oh my God, as a man, I don't even know how bad it is for a woman, but as a man,
worse.
No.
It's worse. It's worse for a woman because our plumbing is internal, yours is external. So it's just the infection. You don't want to go there. So it's worse for a woman. But I mean, it's one thing to do that in a battle where it's the battle happens, it's done. At the end of the day, you remove your harness, you clean up. It's another thing if you're wearing your harness for 4 days straight and you have to do that every single time because your harness doesn't allow for access, shall we say.
Yeah.
You're going to talk about serious infections will arise from that. Skin infections, it's going to be bad. Chafing, no. Oh, no. It's going to be really bad. I say that and then I think, but most knights died in battle of dysentery, so maybe that's what caused it. They were sleeping in their harness like idiots.
I love how Trey just fully understands the suffering soldiers go through. Like we have disagreements on where you should put your rifle, but when it comes down to hygiene, yeah, 100%. Like just the memories of it. Trey, I don't know when the last time you were on the field. I haven't been on the field since 2015, but the memories never go away. The biggest
memories
relief,
never go away.
yeah, biggest relief. I remember I went straight from the military into university. And I remember the first day I was in class and it was raining really heavy. And the relief, man, I had so much of a relief. I was looking outside going, the poor bastards, suffering. And I was inside of a nice little, insanely comfortable classroom, just casually studying medieval history. I was in heaven because I knew everybody I was working with. Well, I just finished up the previous week was because they had to go out in the field and do exercises and stuff, and they were suffering, and I was just nice and comfortable, like, you know. But those that like every single time you see rain, like it's like, oh no.
Yeah, I mean, it's when you have chronicles that mention things like, and they slept in their armor. It's kind of like when they talk about the saints or the ecclesiastical, the men of the church who die and they're disgusting, right? They're covered in lice. Chroniclers generally don't comment on the workaday. They comment on things that are worthy of commentary, that are different, that are unusual, that are strange. So if chroniclers are talking about, and they slept in their armor, that tells me that it wasn't normal. Right, if they're going to comment on it, because chroniclers are writing for their contemporaries. They're not writing for future generations generally, right? They're especially writing usually for the king there, or powerful individual whom they are praising in their work, or or insulting in their work, depending. So generally chroniclers from the Middle Ages are all about the excitement. They're all about the out of the ordinary.
Yeah, we can actually talk about this one because this actually did happen as well in our sources. Because your comment section, it didn't pop up in the main one, but it's your comment section is talking about dysentery that broke out because it happened during Afghanistan. Some of you guys are talking about the incident in Afghanistan when it happened. And it also happened to us when we were in Kenya. It happened to us as well, where I got it as well. Oh my God. Being out in Kenya
Philip.
with diarrhea and vomit.
Oh my God.
Horrendous.
Oh my God. Oh.
But we can talk about that as well, because that broke out during Henry V's campaign as well.
Oh, yeah.
Dysentery broke out. Henry V died. That's how he died.
He did.
From it.
He did.
Yeah, that's what the killed him. Yeah.
Yeah, he did. Most. I mean, this is one of those little known or purposefully ignored facts that most knights who died in battle, or rather on campaign, they shot themselves to death.
Yeah.
It's what happened. They did not die a noble death. They did not die a glorious battlefield moment, clean blow, sword through the heart, and then they keeled over dead happily, having spent their last moments in glory. No. They usually get an arrow to the knee, they get taken off of the field, and 3 days later they die of sepsis, if they're lucky. Or if they're unlucky, they drink some foul water, or somehow contract some kind of horrible bacterial infection that induces dysentery, and they poop themselves to death. So that's how most knights died. If they died of battle-related consequences, it wasn't they just died cleanly on the field of battle. No.
It was, what was it called? It wasn't down to the fact that Henry V wasn't bathing or cleaning himself. What Henry V did was that they were looting from local farms and stuff, and the food they were eating was rotten food. Because they were just picking. They were literally, Henry V was looting from the local lands and stuff. So some of it was dodgy fooding. So they were looting, and they end up getting dysentery, which is quite common actually during the campaigns of the 100 Years' War, especially with the English, is that they will loot the food. So it's not the fact that Henry V isn't washing or bathing himself. It's the fact that it's the food. Anytime they start looting up in the north of France, they always end up eating food. And it actually says that in the sources, because it says something about berries or something, that they were eating dodgy berries.
Oh, shoot. No, they ate the red berries. Never eat the red berries.
Oh.
Never eat the red berries. if you don't know that red berry very intimately, walk away. Just walk away. Red is a danger color. Oh yeah, no, and the thing is that dysentery is not. It's actually more of a syndrome or a set of symptoms. It's not like there are many different things that can cause dysentery. Is my point. So, but the consequence is that basically ultimately your intestines kind of liquefy and you die if you don't die of dehydration first. Yeah. So that's definitely one of the least glamorous aspects of so-called knightly combat in the Middle Ages is that if you're actually on campaign and not just doing the tourney circuit, your cause of death is likely not to be glory.
Yes. Poor Henry V. And there was
Seriously.
something else. Oh yes. How were they cleaning their teeth in the 15th century as well?
Oh, that's a good question.
That as well as part of it. Yeah. It was just they were talking about the hygiene part, cleaning your hands and stuff, and then they moved on to
I can see my chat again. Takeda, when did you just comment? Takeda, I can see my own chat again. Thank you, God. Okay, anyway, you're talking about teeth cleaning. Okay. So we actually have a variety of not just health manuals that from the 12th century going forward, and maybe before that, but I haven't looked before the 12th century, right? That talk about ways to keep your body clean, all of your body, including your teeth. And there's a couple of different methods, Philip, and some of them are disturbing, but probably effective. So one of them was actually to make a paste, an abrasive paste. Made out of a variety of materials, some of them, in some cases, ash. So members of the lower classes of society would actually take fire ash and mix it with water, and then they would actually use a clean cloth. They prescribe a clean cloth, linen, and they would actually scrub their teeth with this paste and the linen, all their teeth. And it was actually probably very effective from what I've read, based, from like dentists who actually understand what's happening there. And one of the reasons is that it would literally polish away the plaque. So you wouldn't have a buildup of plaque on your teeth. And it would also polish, the ash itself is basic. So it would actually be kind of like an antiseptic for your mouth. So it would reduce the bacterial populations in your mouth. And it would actually also clean the stains off of your teeth. So your teeth would, in fact, be made whiter because it would mechanically polish them. The problem is that something that abrasive used consistently over time is going to wear away your enamel. Which could expose you to things like cavities because your enamel is very protective. But that is one thing they did. Another thing they did, and we know this from the Canterbury Tales, actually. In the Miller's Tale, Absalon is the Miller's Tale. By the way, if you all haven't read the Miller's Tale, read the Miller's Tale. It is laugh out loud, body hysterical funny. Basically, it's about a woman who's married to a merchant. She has two lovers. Well, she has one lover, and then she gets rid of him, and she's with this new guy. And Absalon is the first lover, and he doesn't get the clue. He doesn't. When she says, "Go away, leave me alone, I hate you," he doesn't listen to her. He's just so typical. But one of the things, Chaucer always provides these neat little details about his characters, like what they're wearing, their daily habits. And he actually talks about Absalon as being a real ladies' man. And he says that Absalon, before he combs his hair in the morning, the first thing he does is chew on licorice root to freshen his breath. To clean his teeth. It says to clean his teeth and to smell good, and the smell good is his breath. Right. So we know that at the very least in England, for certain, people are chewing on licorice root. And I've had a couple of people comment that they found this for Wales as well in the Middle Ages. And some people have told me that their grandparents still were chewing on licorice root to clean their teeth. So it's one of these practices that apparently persevered for a long while. Medieval people would also, there's some texts from these health manuals that also don't mention an abrasive. They just say to take a cloth and to polish your teeth with it, just straight up a linen cloth. And that you should do this first thing in the morning. One of the sources, actually, I think it's the Regimentum Sanitatis, which was written in the 12th century, supposedly for Henry II, but who knows if that's true. But it actually says that you should clean the scum off of your teeth first thing in the morning so that it will not become plaque. So they actually acknowledge that the white scum kind of at the base of your teeth, they realize that that was the stuff that will eventually form into plaque, and that you should clean it every morning first thing so that that won't happen. So there were also a variety of mouthwashes. A lot of them are wine based, in fact, and depending on the wine, that may or may not have an antiseptic effect. But it would certainly make your mouth smell different. It would make your mouth smell not like you.
Oh God. Another interesting question as well is on it. What was it called? What armies of the 15th century? I'm just going to add 15th century in there just to tidy things up.
Right.
What armies of the 15th century have stolen each other's camp followers and then put them to work? That's a quite interesting one because I have come across that within the Holy Roman Empire. So I have come across that within Austrian military forces when fighting against the Ottoman Empire, is that it was the Ottomans that actually beat the Austrians and then stole their camp followers afterwards. Now, I don't know if they put them to work, but they did sell them afterwards. So they did despicable things to them and then sold them afterwards. So I do know that happened when it comes down to stealing camp followers. When it comes down to, because you guys are talking about the 100 Years' Wars as well, when it comes down to the 100 Years' War, I'm not sure if there's any accounts of people stealing. Oh, actually, the Irish did it as well. They stole camp followers, female camp followers from the French. There's a source somewhere that talks about the French documented it, where the Irish also stole camp followers and actually brought them back to Ireland. I don't know what happened to them then. But yeah, there's accounts actually of the Irish during the 100 Years' War.
Do you remember the source for that? I'd be very interested to read that source.
I cannot remember. I will find it though, because that's documented somewhere. Somebody actually made an account of that, of Irish people stealing French camp followers, women. They were aiming for women, and then bringing them back to Ireland. So that is documented somewhere. I'll go hunt for that one for you guys.
I mean, we should also make clear camp followers is not a synonym for prostitute. Okay. I know a lot of people think, oh, the camp followers, they were all prostitutes. No. Many camp followers were the wives of the men at arms on campaign.
Yeah.
They went along with them to make sure that they didn't get dysentery, basically. They went along with them to make sure they were fed, to make sure, because not all armies had really well organized, centralized logistics like modern armies. Well, good modern armies do, right? So they didn't necessarily have a central kitchen that was providing food for everyone. In many cases, soldiers had to scrounge for themselves. So if you have your wife along with you, then she can help handle things like the laundry, and they can actually make money.
Yeah.
So camp followers very often are laundresses, not prostitutes, who are really just making a good amount of money by washing everyone's linens. Because again, medieval people wanted to be clean. Like, more evidence. I never thought about that as part of the evidence of, people even on campaign wanting to be clean. They had a brigade, basically, metaphor, not really a brigade, but they had a group of women whose sole job was to do the laundry. If you don't care about being dirty and you don't care about your clothes being clean, then why do you need laundresses?
Yep, that's it. Facts. And also on top of that, camp followers also had male camp followers as well, from entertainment to, what was it called? Entertainment, smithing, doing various other chores around the place as well. So you didn't just have female camp followers with them who would have been broken into different groups, but you also had male camp followers as well. But I just so happened to the only reason that it sounded somewhat like that is because I just know of the female camp followers being attacked. I don't know what happened to any male clan followers being stolen and stuff, unless Rachel has any sources
No,
of
I have not. I mean,
clan
I've heard
followers being
about.
stolen.
I haven't read anything offhand, but I don't usually focus on the military side of things. So, you know, most
Mm.
military campaigns bore me. It's like, oh, and they fought, and of course there were 10,000 men, and they slaughtered 30,000 of them, and it's all hyperbole. It's all propaganda. It's just more or less like every campaign to me, every battle chronicle reads the same to me. It's like, oh, and they fought,
Mm.
and they fought. It's like reading. It's like reading
There's the
Ulrich
men
von
going off to war.
Liechtenstein's. It's like reading Ulrich von Liechtenstein's autobiography, and I don't know. I shoot. I don't know if you've done that or not. The real Ulrich von Liechtenstein, not
No.
the Knight's Tale. But he actually was a knight
Mm.
who did the tourney circuit in the 13th century. He was noble. He was not a cottager's
Mhm.
son. And he actually wrote this hysterical autobiography, which involves him going on this great deed of arms in honor of this noblewoman who doesn't want him. And he for the most part, he in between that it's sandwiched. The beginning is really funny and disturbing, and the end is hysterical and disturbing, and in the middle it's literally nothing but, and I jousted with so and so, and I jousted with so and so, and I broke lances with so and so, and I broke lances with so and so. It's like the begat section of the Bible in the Old Testament, where it's just so and so begat so and so, and begat so and so begat
Mm.
so and so. I fell asleep. So yeah, I get bored. Violence bores me. Actually, I fall asleep during violent battle
Mm.
scenes in movies, and I wake up when they stop. So literally, it bores me to sleep. Which is
Mm.
a
Fair
long walk
enough.
to say. I don't. If we're reading about a campaign, I scroll on until we get to or I read on until we get to details about camp life or about the
Mm.
people and their individual interactions with each other.
Mm. When it comes down to washing, there is actually like loads of different ways. Sorry, just going back into the comments section there.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Obviously, Rachel can expand on what it is to wash yourself. But in Ireland, it was actually what you would have done is you would have gone to a steam. They would build entire steam rooms out of roundhouses, most of the time made of stone or made some kind of steam room, and then you would go in there and steam the body, and then afterwards you would wipe down all the body. So that's how they would have cleaned themselves in the early medieval in Ireland. Rachel pointed out there sometimes they just have the old bat and scrub yourselves in a nice warm bat. Sometimes you would just kind of wipe yourself down, as Rachel has expanded before. There's dozens of different ways you can actually just clean the body. In Japan, they would have a nice warm bash as well. And what they would do is they would have hot stones. Sometimes they could have hot stones at the bottom, but then other times as well, what you could do is just have something to boil the bottom of it. But you have to make sure that there is a wooden plank to stand on, so you're not being actually burned by the bottom of the bat and whatever you're using to heat the bat itself at the time. So there is, depending on your location, where you are in the world, and also good night. Need to work tomorrow. Night, lads. We'll start finishing up here as well. Rachel had to disappear sadly. What was it called? So it depends on your location in the world. She's frozen. Yeah, she kind of disappeared there. We'll start finishing up soon anyway, so it's grand. And what else is there? Boom, boom, boom. So yeah, it depends on your location of the world, where you are in the world at the time, and also it depends on what era as well. So batting does change over time depending on location and stuff, because we get more better bats obviously as you go into the Viking Age. The Viking Age also brings in a whole load of bats as well, because of the fact that the Vikings were also massively cleaned as well. Night, 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 night. Everybody going off to sleepies. What's it called? I'll start finishing up as well. Unless Rachel magically returns. Oh, it's just me alone. we'll see what happens there anyway. What was it called? India used to mean sticks and brush teeth. It depends what era you're talking about when it comes down to India, and it depends on your location because you also have India's quite complicated because it has three major areas of development. First and foremost, obviously, we know of Bangladesh, which is up in the northeast of the country, and it's kind of in control of those rivers up in the Bangladeshian area. And obviously, then with the environment, plenty of hill defenses and stuff, it's easy to defend that area against invaders and stuff. So Bangladesh is kind of always doing its own independent thing, and Bangladesh is always connected into the East Asia area as well. Then you have southern India. Oh God, I can't remember specifically what that name of the culture is called. They end up dominating. Oh God, the spelling and everything is in my head, but the actual area now popped over my head. You can tell India is not my field of expertise, that's for sure. But there is another more native group in the southern part of India. Then you have the northwest of India, where you have that constant movement of nomadic tribes going into that area. And it's also where you see the Hindus. The culture we know today, identify as India today, actually comes from the northwest of India, the Hindu culture. So the Hindu culture dominates up in the north west of the area, but the area is also very much dominated by continuous waves of nomadic tribes. Where is Rachel gone? I don't know where Rachel's gone. She's disappeared into the darkness. She hasn't given me a message yet, so could be just a jump on the internet. I'll finish up with some more questions there. I think Rachel's lost connection. Yeah, could have been. Could be just a sudden drop in the internet or something on her side. I'll start to finish up here now in the next 5 minutes or so until maybe Rachel will reappear. I don't know, but we'll start finishing up here. If you guys got any questions to do with the medieval period, definitely send a text there below. And me at the joys of it. Optics ready to burn me. Last few minutes of your podcast. Yeah, that's the joys. Oh, there she is.
Okay.
Rachel's back.
My phone died. Yeah,
Oh,
my
the
phone
joys.
died a hard, horrible death. Yes, it did.
Mhm.
Okay, let me fix this now.
Did the Irish have bathhouses? The Irish do have bathhouses with the coming of the Vikings. So once the Vikings come in, they start to bring in their types of bathhouses. The Irish before that are using saunas. So we have tons and tons of evidence from the Bronze Age upwards that the Irish would go build their own sauna house and they would just sweat out a lot of the dirt and stuff. And then afterwards, they would just give themselves a full wipe down. So before that, they would have sauna houses, and that's how they cleaned themselves during the. Also, they would have dipped in the water and stuff as well because the water wasn't as manky as it was back in the day. So they would have done plunging as well. There may be arguments and debates over plunging, going into icy cold water and stuff, but we have those existed. They still exist today, which is the saunas, the sweat saunas that they had. So for a good chunk of the early medieval period, and even up to the late medieval period, you still have those kind of sauna sweat houses that the Irish are using. But then once the Vikings go in there, it's then at that point onwards that they start to have more bathhouses that come in from Scandinavia. And then coming in with the Normans and the English, you start getting more of the European style of bathhouses and stuff in the likes of Dublin, Cork, Waterford, Limerick. But on saying that, it doesn't mean that they stopped using saunas. Saunas are nice. I like a good sauna. Do you know?
Yeah, saunas. Like the ancient, actually in the ancient world, like the Greeks and the Romans, their style of bathing, they didn't use soap on their bodies. They would actually, sweat it out in the columbarium, and they would actually take a strigil, olive oil and a strigil, and they would actually scrape away the sweat and the dirt and the dead skin cells using this strigil. So you don't really necessarily. This is why I keep telling people you don't necessarily need soap to get clean and to stay clean. In fact, one of the some of you have heard me talk about Cosmetica Obscura before. There are two ladies, two twin sisters, who are recreating historical toiletries and cosmetic products using original historical recipes. And one of the things that they actually experimented with the ancient Roman, ancient Greek style of bathing for like several weeks, Living History for the Win. And she actually used just the olive oil and the strigil on her skin. And she said by the end of the experiment, her skin was so soft and it was so clean,
Jesus.
and so moisturized. She said it felt great, actually, to not be constantly stripping away your skin's natural oils, beyond what should be removed. And the olive oil is actually good at picking up all the dirt and the dead skin cells and carrying it away with them. So for those of you who don't want to, immerse you to take a shower or apply water to your body, no problem. Olive oil and a strigil, and you're good to go.
Happy days. And just to answer Jim's question there before we start finishing up, yeah, you're right. Actually, in Ireland, if you were to get your head shaved, it is a massive punishment because it's a huge, what was it called? Undermining a person's status inside of medieval Ireland, all the way from the early medieval up to the late medieval period of shaving. In the High Middle Ages, like shaving your beard isn't so much of a punishment just because all the Europeans are doing it. So you do see even Gaelic chieftains shaving their beard in the High Middle Ages. But as me and Rachel were looking at in the 15th century, even in Anglo-Irish society, those beards are back, and it's seen as a massive part of your manliness because of the fact that cattle raiding was a huge part of Irish society. So therefore, having a big manly beard was a part of that as well. Like that's the whole point of the statutes of Kilkenny was the fact that you did have Anglo-Irish lords kicking about Ireland with big, strong beards.
Yep.
So the punishment was, especially in the early medieval period and the late medieval period, was to have all your body hair shaved because that was the lowest point in society, was a huge undermining of a person's status. I'm not sure about the late medieval period, but definitely in the early medieval period, you were then sold into slavery. You were a slave. And you must have really messed up society to be able to be turned into a slave as a punishment. That's probably worse than excommunication, because most of the time you will hear of lads being excommunicated from the community. So that's it. They're just kicked out of the community, which is one of the worst crime, stuff that you could commit, to be kicked out of your clan, because then you don't have protection. And then you're up to, like, cattle raiders, kerns, can then just, as they're wandering around the countryside, they can just go up and kill you. And there's no, because, you always have a little sadist in the group that's like, oh, I can kill him and get away with it. And that's what they do. They can go up now and just chop you up. And there's no punishment because there's no clan to go over and, defend you, because you've been kicked out of your clan. So that's what happens most of the time, is people are exiled. But if you're going from a good status within the clan and then you're being turned into a slave within your own clan, like this is your own clan doing this, turning you into a slave, then you must have really messed up. Like just imagine your own father's turning around to you and saying, son, because you were so bold, we're turning you into a slave. Like just think about that. Like, what the hell did you do? Do you know?
I think there's some teenagers these days who could maybe benefit from that.
Yeah.
at least like a temporary experience. You know what I mean? To really put things in perspective and maybe convince them that behaving well and conforming to society's norms is the better choice.
Yeah. I'm not sure. Like, I assume that, I don't know if eyebrows were ever shaved, to be honest with you. Beard in Ireland, hair was a huge part of the status, especially in early medieval period, because of the fact that, you're talking about, a group of people that would have groomed themselves. So if you have a beard and you have hair, you would have also looked like you were well groomed. Like, this isn't a bunch of savages with, I know you guys probably have an idea of a Celtic savage with, leaves and stuff in his hair. But no, Shirley Bob.
With leaves in his hair.
You hear all
and
this
dreads,
stuff going.
of course, dreadlocks.
Well,
dreadlocks because
dreadlock
he
controversial.
because he never combs his hair, right? And
Yeah.
it's just
Oh
filled
God.
with mud. Yeah, of course. Gotcha.
Yeah,
Understand.
the mud one is the dreadlocks is controversial because of the fact that we do actually have an effigy of a Welsh Viking who actually has his hair dreaded. But that's down. That could be a Mediterranean influence, but that there's a huge argument about that.
Well, wait, what era, like we're talking like
So there's
8th,
a
ninth
10th century.
century?
There's
10th
a
century, yeah.
there's a 10th century
So, I
effigy
mean,
and one
here's the thing about those 10th century, those rune stones and those effigies.
it's wooden.
They're very stylized.
Yeah.
And they're not particularly photorealistic. So
Mm,
I would hesitate to use that as
yeah.
an example of people had dreadlocks.
Yeah. You see, it is
I
controversial.
Yeah,
Mm,
I would rather, like, if we had this is Ireland, there could be bog bodies, right? If we
yeah.
had bog bodies whose hair was, showed intentional dreading,
Mm,
then I'd be inclined to believe that. But when you're
yeah.
talking about that first millennium art, it can sometimes be hard to see what is happening at all in
Mm,
those depictions, let alone to walk away with a confident belief that dreadlocks were absolutely a thing they did.
mm.
I would lean towards it might show it, but it also might not.
Yeah. This is the problem, though, with that whole the Celtic image that people have is that people think, oh, well, these people are close to nature, so they must have leaves in their hair, and it's like,
Right.
but these people were high status within a society that romanticized the Roman Empire, like in 550. When what was it called? You have this clan society starting to emerge into a golden age of Ireland, is that they're very much romanticizing the Roman Empire. That's why they build Clonmacnoise. So they're constantly having this civilized idea. So this whole idea of anyone being, and you're dealing with a stage where people are going from Celtic paganism into in what we refer to as insular Christianity, which
Hmm.
is a
Yeah.
blur in itself, going into Roman Christianity. But on saying that druids and priests are very high status people and they have to be seen in the society as high status. So going
Right.
around being smelly with leaves in your hair, no, 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 no. You can't have that in society. You can't in reality, it can't function. I know in like video games and all that movies and all that stuff, and even Fox News documentaries, they have druids with leaves their hair and stuff. And it's like, I'm the Druid. I have leaves in my hair because I'm a
I
part of
have
nature. And
leaves.
it's like,
Like,
they
oh
can't
my
be,
god.
they have to be part of the community. And in the community, they have to have a high status. So they're covered in, a lot of times there's even descriptions of them in silk. They most likely did have some kind of silk garment on them. They definitely would have like, been cleaned every day.
Oh.
And on top of that as well, like leaves in the hair, no, no, there's no way. Maybe some form of oak on them. Probably not in their hair though,
Right. I mean, especially if you look at ancient Celtic graves
Mm,
from from the Bronze Age, they are so sophisticated. They
yeah,
contain such stunning gold work, by the
yeah.
way. There's a Celtic grave in Germany near where I lived for 12 years that had an intact wagon inside of it. And it was a massive wagon, and it was we're talking 3000 BC. It
Mm,
was very 2000 BC, very sophisticated, built in a very sophisticated manner. The Celts were not nature; they weren't tree huggers, right?
yeah.
This myth of them being close to nature, that is not the truth of the Celtic people. They were sophisticated, well organized society who wanted the same things most humans want, which is to look
Mm,
pretty.
mm.
So
The f-
yeah, that I don't know, that idea of the Celts being close to nature, is that a golden bough thing? Is that
that that
another
mostly
thing we
goes.
should attribute?
It,
Go
it,
on.
the thing is in Ireland that you get that romantic idea because of oak shrines. So people are like, oh well, they're connected to the oak shrines that people were going off to pray to. So people have that idea then of it being connected to nature, and them as you guys are pointing out there, would they have flower crowns in their head and stuff? I've never come across a single source of them making flower crowns and stuff. This is all like ideas people have from the 1960s with the hippie
Right.
movement and stuff.
Yeah.
Because if you go to Japan, for example, where they also have shrines, they're also connected to nature. I've never come across a oh God, within Shintoism. I've never come across a Shinto priest. I know tons of Shinto priests. What was it called on mainland? In fact, there's a Shinto priest who looks after my wife's family and stuff, and they're also insanely clean. They have a perfectly clean uniform and everything. So and Shintoism is also very much connected with nature and stuff, but it still keeps to this whole. It does actually cleanliness next to godliness.
Right.
There's
Yeah.
always a fear within both Shintoism, Buddhism, and Christianity, because we can see the same thing with Saint Columba of demons. Demons are connected to dirt.
Dirt.
If
Yep.
you're running around being dirty, and we know this from Saint Columba, you're connected to demons.
Yep.
And this is a time of insular Christianity. So it's a blur between Celtic pagan beliefs and insular Christian beliefs. But yet it defines in St. Columba's bibliography that dirt, because there's a dirty bucket there that's connected to a demon. There's a demon in that bucket. And it makes
In
it
the
really,
dirty bucket. Yep.
it doesn't turn around and say that's a heretic bucket or a pagan bucket. No, it just outright calls it a demon bucket. That has a demon in it, which means that the Irish at the time, when they're digesting the world around them, are anytime they get sick from something that hasn't been scrubbed clean, they're saying
Right.
that's a demon. There's demons in that bucket, you know.
And then that's it. It's funny. They may have that may show some kind of primordial understanding of germ theory, but probably not. I'm
Yeah.
just tossing that idea. That probably not. But what it does show is what have I been saying? What have you and I been saying? That medieval people understood cause and effect.
Yeah.
Right. They understood that if you don't clean the kitchen equipment properly, people get sick afterwards. Did they maybe, according to St. Columba, possibly interpret that then as being, possessed by demons and the cleaning, therefore exorcising the demons? Sure, maybe. But who cares? At the end effect, medieval people wanted not just themselves, but their things to be clean because they recognized that unclean things made you sick for whatever reason. Right.
Ireland, running water. No, there's always clean water in Ireland because we have running river water and stuff. We also have wells in Ireland as well. So in Ireland, to clean the water, you can boil it. There's a lot of boiling going on as well. And most famously, and this is something I always need to correct, is what was it called? Oh my, brewing the water when the water is being brewed. There's this idea that when the water is brewed, it gets turned into alcohol and everyone's walking around drunk all the time. No, it is brewed to a level where it's safe to drink, not to become alcohol. So when people are looking at these sources and they see the Irish brewing the water, people then assume, the Irish are drunk all the time. No. And this is one of the problems when it comes down to the Irish, the stereotype of the Irish always being drunk is sources like this. No, when you have members, and it was actually members of the clergy that used to do this, used to brew the water clean. So not only do you have clean, because this is before the modern era where we decided it would be a wonderful idea to put nuclear waste in our water.
Right.
What was it called? So modern day water in Ireland, do not drink from the river because it has nuclear waste on it because of spillages after World War II. So do not drink running water today in Ireland. It has nuclear waste in it. But back in the medieval period, you could go up to a river that was rushing down from a hillside and drink the water because the stones would make it clean, right? On top of that, unless there was a dead animal, that's why you always had people that would run up and down the river to make sure there's nothing dead in it beforehand, right? And also no one urinating. What's it called? So make sure you always have somebody running up. But they knew these things. They knew to run up and down the water before drinking out of it. And also wells. So they also would build wells as well where they would have fresh drinking water from it. And then finally they would brew the water clean, not to turn, well, sometimes if they wanted fun, they would brew it into alcohol. We have obviously endless amount of
so you don't brew alcohol, you distill alcohol. So distillation doesn't really distillation for centuries is a secret held by the Arabs because they invented it. And then, well, they didn't invent it. I guess there's evidence that we were distilling things in ancient Babylon. But anyway, it's a secret held in the Middle East for centuries. It eventually makes its way into Europe, but it's used for alchemy. It is not used to produce vast amounts of distilled spirits for drinking. Spirits, as they were called, were used in alchemical procedures, right? The quest for this philosopher's stone that will turn, anything into gold. You don't really get distillation until like the very end of the 15th century.
Well, yeah. There you go. There's actually a source in Ireland. Yeah, go on.
But it's not common, and it's expensive. It's very expensive. We're not talking about gin mills like we have in the 18th century where everyone is hooked on gin.
Yeah.
And worse. We're not at that time yet. We are not at the drunk Europe time. That's the 18th century. That's when that really starts happening. And an ale and small beer is beer and ale, or what we would call our small beer and small ale. They're more like kombucha, right? They're like 1%, 2% alcohol by volume. They're barely alcoholic.
Yeah.
So we're not there yet.
It was, what was it called? The monks in 15th, as you pointed out, the 15th century is when we get the first source of whiskey in Ireland. And it turns into a linguistic nightmare because it's connected to, what was it, spirit water or something?
The
or
water of life. The water of life. Water of life.
For linguistics, it's really, really funny. And it's simple for them. Trying to explain it to somebody who doesn't understand Middle Irish is somewhat of a nightmare. But it directly translated, it means like water of life, as you point out there. But then linguistically, it just means straight up whiskey. And it is quite funny because that's where it starts to appear in 15th century literature to do with the monks. And then it makes its way over to Scotland because of the connection between the Highlands and stuff, which bloody hell, I was trying to explain yesterday to a Scottish person. Don't get me wrong, most Scottish people understood, Scottish people actually understood the difference between the Highlands and the Lowlands, and how in the medieval period, the Scotland that we know of today would be the Lowlands. Okay. And then eventually the Lowlands takes over the Highlands through its administration in the 17th century. But I was talking to people yesterday when I was trying to explain this, and there were allegedly people from Scotland who did not understand the Highlands. And this didn't just happen once. This happened a few times. I'm like, right, so allegedly you're Scottish, but you don't know about the Highlands and you don't know the difference between the Highlands and the Lowlands. Like, do you know about Celtic history? Like,
well, I mean, I've had, so my video, my short, we were talking about the kilt, and I published that short about the history of the kilt. I had one Scotsman come to me and say, "Show me your sources." I showed him my sources, and then he said, "Well, they lie." They're like, "Oh, okay," because he's like, this is the kilt we've had. All Scotsmen know that we've had the kilt since time immemorial.
Oh.
This is our great national garment. I'm a Scotsman, I know. Whereas under that same video, another Scotsman commented, "Yeah, it was great to read this because clearly you know way more than I do, like probably than most Scots," right? Yeah. So it was really funny how he had this attitude of, how dare you come and talk about my culture? I'm like, wait, dude, I'm American. You should probably guess that I've got Scottish heritage too. Just saying, as a white American, it's very likely I have Scottish heritage. We're mutts, remember? My ancestors come from literally all over Europe. So this isn't just your history. This is my history also. But this is what the history shows. You can emotionally want to have a kilt be an ancient Celtic garment worn by your proud Pictish ancestors, but that doesn't make it true. Yeah, same thing. Same thing. Didn't understand the difference and didn't understand how language works. Like, the word kilt is not a Scottish word, buddy. It just isn't. And the thing that you come to call the kilt starts off as a blanket. Sorry.
Yes. Facts. Only saying hard facts. We'll start finishing up because
Yeah.
we could easily start turning into more
Yeah.
conversations because some of you guys want to talk religion, some of you guys now want to talk Braveheart,
Yeah.
and we'll
So
end up having an
yeah.
entire tangent.
Yeah, we would.
But
And I
I
will.
will
I will
say,
just. I will just
if
confirm.
one,
Yeah. What Husafel says. Yes, you're right. The men wearing kilts in Braveheart, not at all accurate. Not
nah,
by 400 years, not accurate.
100%, that's a
Yeah.
fact. Anyway, if you guys want to continue this conversation on Braveheart, Scottish clans, etc., 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 definitely head on over to my channel at Irish Medieval History. This weekend with Mihal from Clans and Dynasties, we'll continue talking about everything to do with the Celts, clans, and the Gaelic culture in general. So definitely tune in then. Rachel, any plans for this week or the weekend or whatever? Well, except for Friday.
Yeah.
Obviously, we're live again on Friday at the same time, doing the same stuff again. Other than
Yeah.
that, any other plans,
Let's
Rachel?
see. Yeah, I've got my medieval sewing party and medieval story time on Saturday. Saturday
Hmm.
Seoul Standard Time, depending on your part of the world, that might be Friday. And then, of course, on Sunday, we'll have my usual medieval cooking party. That will be Sunday morning, all of you time, Asia time, or Saturday evening, Americas. So, yeah, got plenty of plans. And of course, I do random live streams also as the mood strikes me. So, if you would like to be notified when we go live, make sure you click on the notification bell on our respective channels and make certain that all is ticked. Personalized notifications mean that YouTube will let you know when it thinks you should know, not when you want to know. Yep. Yeah. Oh, what is the Contessa making? Okay, I am actually working on it. I can actually maybe try it on for you. This is my new Burgundian gown, the thing that should actually go over top of this one. We're making good progress on it, actually. So let me see if I can pop this on. This is the overdress that should be worn over this kirtle when I go out of doors. And it's not done yet, but it's getting good progress. So this is made of wool, and it's a wool that is so silky, I could just roll around in it naked, right? Okay. So here it is. Yep. Imagine sleeves. It has sleeves. I just haven't attached them yet. But yeah, this is where we are, right? Yep. So yeah. And actually this is the first time I've gotten to put it on because I just finished attaching the shoulder on the other side. So you all are actually witnessing its first try on, in fact, since I started sewing it. So you get to witness me thinking, I need to take it in the waist. It's a little too big here and there. But otherwise, it's actually sitting quite nicely. Yeah,
for sure.
So yeah, this is a kind of gown that would have been worn in France, Burgundy, the Low Countries, and England also in the second half of the 15th century, and it would have been worn over exactly this outfit.
That's
so yeah,
class. It's absolutely gorgeous. It's really good on you, Rachel. Well
yeah,
done
thank you.
making that. It's so
thank
gorgeous.
You.
I'm actually
Thank
looking forward to what we do. And Jesus Christ, you're going to end up giving me a slap in the head. We need to get back to doing the research on the 15th century Irish clothing. Do you know what? Bloody right down. We'll start talking about that on Friday, actually. We'll about 15. I'll fix up everything for tomorrow. I've actually got breathing space tomorrow. Not so much today, tomorrow. Right, tomorrow now I'll sit down and sort that out. I do apologise, Rachel. And our Patreons have been supporting us. But anybody who's into that now, we'll get back to that conversation on Friday and the weekend as well. And what was it called? On 15th century Irish clothing, because it's a huge project of ours. We'll get back to that. Also, on top of that, lads, I forgot to say as well, this Sunday, what Sunday bloody on now? It's the 22nd. Jesus Christ, the time is disappearing like there's no tomorrow.
Yeah, it is.
But on the 2nd, lads, I will be continuing, or at least starting up, my presentations to do with the Scottish War of Independence. The conversations we've been having mostly has been revolved around the 13th century leading into the Scottish War of Independence itself. But the classes on the Scottish War of Independence will be starting on the 2nd of next month. Okay, guys? So if you're interested in the Scottish War of Independence, now is the time to definitely head on over to my Patreon at Irish Medieval History and sign up there, or just have an old nosy check up on how you can support the channel. I prefer using Patreon because I don't have to worry about being cut off for copyright reasons. I can just quite literally just do whatever I want over on Patreon. So I prefer using Patreon over YouTube. Other than that,
Yeah.
guys, thank you so much for all the support you've been giving me recently. It means so much to myself and Rachel. And we didn't get to, because of the way that this live stream is working right now, we didn't see all the donations pop up. So I do apologize to anyone that had given us donations and we didn't answer any question or anything. Definitely get back to us if we didn't. You can always message me, give an old message to me over on Instagram at Irish Medieval History. So if there's anything else you want to ask me, head on over there and give me an old follow while you're at it.
So there were a couple of questions.
We need to talk about.
There are a couple of final questions because they asked me to try it on. Is my necklace 15th century style? Yes, this is a replica of an original that was owned by a woman named Maria Portinari. She was actually Florentine, but her husband was a high-ranking representative of the Medici Bank in the Duchy of Burgundy, and so they lived there. They lived in Bruges for most of her life, and so she actually had this, and she's depicted wearing this both as a new bride and then 15 years later in a later altarpiece depicting her. So this is a replica by Armor and Castings, and you can buy this on their website, armorandcastings.com. And yes, there was another question. Will I be cutting the back down? Will I be taking, so the neckline is not quite finished. It's a turn down collar. So I haven't sewn it yet. That's why it looks all weird. So it's a turn down collar. So no, the neckline will be fine. The thing where I need to take it in is here in the waist. See, look at all that. Look at all that room. Too big. I have a small waist. It needs to be small also. Okay. Then I would also like to thank all of my channel members for supporting me, for my patrons on Patreon for supporting me, for my Facebook subscribers, for actually being generous enough to give me your money to do this research, do the recreation, and share it all with you. So I know money is tight these days, and so I'm very honored by anyone who feels that I'm worthy of being the recipient of your generosity. I'd like to also thank all those of you who super chatted and gave gems. I don't know why I wasn't being shown that when I should have been, and I feel badly. So I really do appreciate all of you. Right, Philip? Isn't that frustrating?
Yeah, I know, right? What the hell? Especially when that does mean so much to myself and Rachel and the research that we've been putting towards various projects. We'll get on top of the project on, 15th century Irish clothing on Friday. We'll actually go back over that again for everybody that's donated so far. And everybody who wants to donate, definitely head on over to the Patreon at 15th century Irish clothing. Have an old nosy.
Oh, no, not Patreon. Not Patreon. GoFundMe. GoFundMe.
Oh, sorry,
GoFundMe.
GoFundMe. Yeah,
GoFundMe.
Yeah. But we'll focus on it on Friday. So if you guys want to have an old nosy and stuff, what was it called? We'll completely cover it on Friday, and we'll also expand onto other subjects that are happening on the medieval news and all that stuff, because there's tons and tons to talk about, especially now that we're going back into another year full of medieval events and all that kind of stuff. So we'll cover it all on Friday. Yay, Irish clothing. I know, right? Irish clothing is amazing. We should cover it more. Anyway, I'll see you when I see you guys.
Okay.
Slán, go on.